we do now is in your presence. And we ask that you would open up the eyes of our minds and our hearts to your presence and to your leading. You would give us the desire to follow you and to glorify you in what's done today. We lift up to you our leaders at every level that are above us and ask that they would see and do the things they see and hear you doing. We ask that you would help us as each of us follow and lead in whatever we do today. We ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. Please face the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Morning, gentlemen. Any additions, deletions to the agenda?
Move approval as presented.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Davis. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next on the agenda is proclamations and presentations. A presentation of proclamation honoring Alma Miller on her retirement effective January 31st, 2013. This will be presented by Commissioner Tinzorf. Commissioner.
Good morning. If Alma can come up to the podium here, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Proclamation honoring Alma Miller on her retirement effective January 31st, 2013. Whereas Alma Miller, born and raised in New Jersey, where she graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from the College of St. Elizabeth, and whereas Alma Miller was employed by AT&T for 23 years, retiring as project manager and relocating with her husband Glenn to Indian River County. And whereas Alma Miller began her second career as an interviewing clerk with the Indian River County Health Department, Environmental Health Division on July 3rd, 2000, later being promoted to staff assistant. And whereas Alma Miller, affectionately known as Miss Miller, consistently demonstrated her aura and utmost professionalism in her appearance, work product, and approach to customer service. And whereas Miss Miller revealed her compassion and concern for the community by reaching out to those in need as a volunteer through HIV/AIDS Network, Every Dream Has a Price, Wabasso Progressive League, VNA Hospice, Consulate Healthcare, Church of God Treasure Coast District Evangelism Team. And whereas Alma served as citizen of Indian River County in an exemplary manner for 12 years at Indian River County Health Department and as a community volunteer. And whereas Alma's love of the people and belief of its importance of family inspired those around her, and although she is retiring from Indian River County Health Department, her passion for helping people in need will continue. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Indian River County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the board extends to Alma Miller thanks for a job well done and heartfelt wishes for a happy and healthy retirement, adopted this 22nd day of January 2013. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Would you like to say a few words?
Yes, sir. I just want to thank you all for the opportunity you gave me since being in Indian River County. I would like to thank many of the board members, but in particular Joe Flesher and your county administrator. Some of you call him Mr. Beard, but very seldom do I hear you say Beard. It's usually Joe Beard. I want to thank you for the opportunity that you all have given me. I grew up in New Jersey, but I know more about Indian River County than I ever knew about Monmouth or Somerset County in New Jersey, mainly because of the opportunities that you all have provided for me. I want to thank Cheryl Dunn, my manager. I want to thank Miranda Hawker, the administrator of the health department. They gave me free reign to do the work that I do and the love that I do. And I thank my husband for taking the picture. I always say he's the most handsome man in the room. We celebrate 43 years of marriage this year. Wow. And this is the second retirement, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. There is a scripture, and I will go evangelical, and it says, the time of my departure is at hand. I fought a good fight. I've finished my course, and I've kept the faith. But that's for the Indian River County Health Department. That's not for Indian River County. I believe I will be able to still do a work, and as they call on me, I want to be available until I die. Thank you so much.
Ms. Meyer? Maya, come on down, sir. Yeah, Maya's going to want to take a picture here as well.
And you get to come up for a picture now.
Come on up. You're going to have a picture taken. I think Miss Maya would like to participate as well. And maybe somebody else could take the picture, and Frank could be here as well. Come on.
Yeah, we want you to pick.
I'm not dressed. I'm fine.
Easy on the flag here, Frank.
Easy on the flag here. And he's a good photographer. He's got a good subject. Thank you. We're going to miss you. It's retirement this time to say we're going to miss you and thank you for your service, but Alma with Miss Meyer just right in the same building. I believe you'll be here to visit us frequently. We wouldn't want to miss out on your ubiquitous smile. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Next on the agenda is the presentation by Dale Armstrong, Forest Area Supervisor, the Florida Forest Service, Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, 2011-2012 Wildfire Protection Annual Report. Dale?
Now, were you able to say that all in one breath?
I tried.
That was pretty long there. I know the long title.
Thank you.
Hey, that was great to hear Miss Miller say that she was going to just retire from a job, but not from life. You know, and I think that's a good lesson for all of us. You know that just because we quit our jobs doesn't mean that our job in life is over with. So that's for sure. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
And it is a good morning because we woke up. So that's always a good morning when I wake up on the right side of the grass.
With no wildfires.
What's that?
With no wildfires.
With no wildfires, except we did have one before the rains yesterday. We had one down at South County Park, and that was quickly extinguished. And but mostly my purpose for being here this morning is I just wanted to reacquaint us with the board and to let you guys know that we're still here in this county. We're still active, and we're still doing things with the Parks and Recreation Department as well as the Indian River Fire Rescue. Last year, we had a reduction in wildfires from 44 in the previous year to 14. However, our largest fire that we did have was out in the Fellsmere area, which was 355 acres. Pretty good size that had us a little concerned there for a while with all the wind switches we had. We weren't really sure we were going to get it until we had some, I think, preordained rainfall out there that knocked it down for us, but that really helped us out. But aside from that, knowing that we do fight wildfires, we also do a lot of stuff with prevention of wildfires, doing pre-suppression, we call it. And a lot of the county-owned lands, the natural lands that the county has, are in what we call our wildland-urban interface, where we have homes right next to woods that actually burn. And so what we've done in conjunction with the Parks and Rec Department, we have gone in there with some of our equipment and put in fire lines. We've either took roller choppers or large mowers and mowed lines around those areas just to reduce the fuel so that it makes it easier for us and for Indian River Fire Rescue to protect those homes. And so we've been doing that on a few tracks up in Roseland, also at 512 and 510 intersection. There's the Anson track that's there, the Hallstrom Farmstead. We're going to be doing more on the south Oslo Riverfront Conservation Area. We've done some work out there as well. And the Russell Grove tract as well. Actually did a prescribed burn out there last year. So we're looking to do more of that this year. Of course, we have our own budget woes, and we've been forced to park some vehicles here lately, and we're hoping to swing back into action here in February and continue some of the work that we started working with the county. Also, we're going to be doing training with Indian River Fire Rescue, getting to know them. We're going to be having a high turnover with Indian River Fire Rescue. That also goes with our high turnover rate as well. So we're trying to introduce our folks with their new folks, and so that when we do get out on the fire scene, we know each other. And we have our standard operating procedures. There's a seamless flow into those standard operating procedures. Other than that, that's just about it. And that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to have a 3 to 5 minutes, and to entertain any questions if you have any.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Solari.
Mr. Austin, thanks for coming today.
Yes.
A couple of questions, if I could. One is, how many employees do you have in the area?
We have 4. I have 4 forest rangers that work here, but we also have forest rangers in neighboring counties that can come in and assist, and they have regularly.
And that was sort of my next question. Just as your organization, how much of that, do you view yourself as a county-by-county organization or as a regional, tri-county organization, more or less, or I'm just trying to get some sense?
Sure. What we do is we're broken up into 16 districts across the state. Our district includes Indian River, St. Lucie, Martin, Treasure Coast, Okeechobee, Highlands, and Glades counties. And our district office is in Okeechobee. And personally, I'm the supervisor for Indian River and St. Lucie counties.
Okay, so you might have one sort of aspect of your organization in Okeechobee and another aspect of it in Indian River County, and you go where needed to some extent.
Exactly. Okay. Like on the Sandhill fire that we had last year up in Fellsmere, we actually had the neighboring district send us a dozer down to assist us. We had the helicopter and another bulldozer come from Okeechobee to help us on that as well. So the response time, doesn't seem that great, but we were able to hold it, with what we had.
Thanks. I just want to get a little better sense. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Davis?
Yes, and just should you ever run short on staff, many people may not know this, but our deputy county attorney, Mr. Bill DeBrawl, was with the Forestry Department as an urban forester, so we'll just add it to his contract if you need us to.
We got him on standby.
Okay,
great. We keep into account everybody past employees that we've had too, so yeah, trust me.
Well, Dale, thank you for your presentation, realizing that California is probably more familiar with or more burdened with forest fires, but however, we still have that threat, and to know that you're there with the equipment that we've seen in use, especially that helicopter drop in the water. We really appreciate everything that you're doing to ensure the public safety, and I'm sure all of our firefighters appreciate the relationship.
Yeah, we do too.
Thank you.
It's a great working relationship. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next on the agenda is a presentation by Missy Elwood and Frank Menino, volunteer event organizers. They're going to talk about the St. Baldrick's Cancer Foundation and a little bit of a project or a challenge, I understand. Thank you. Good morning.
And good morning, and thank you, Chairman Fletcher, County Commissioners. We appreciate very much the opportunity to be here. We do have a brief presentation. If I wasn't technically challenged, I'd know how to do that now. But unfortunately, I'm not. Oh.
There it goes.
We have some assistance for you.
Thank you for the technology. So I wanted to introduce Indian River County to a foundation called St. Baldrick's. And before I get into the presentation, very briefly, we raise money for childhood cancer research, and the way we do that is we shave our heads. So a little different approach, and as I look at the group in front of me, there are some wonderful heads to be shaved up there, and of course...
some more than others.
Everybody's got something to offer.
More to lose.
Everybody can bring something to the table.
Actually, we may have to have a fundraiser to get some guys some hair.
I thought that was funny.
I like it. I enjoyed it too.
Mr. Davis would think that's funny because in a few short weeks he's going to be bald. Because I'm certain at the end of our meeting today he'll agree to shave his head to raise money for childhood cancer research. Chairman Fleischer has already done so, so we thank you for that very, very much. So very briefly, what started as a challenge between friends has been turned into the world's largest volunteer-driven organization that raises money for childhood cancer research. So why? Why do we exist? Each year, close to 175,000 children will be diagnosed with cancer, some form of cancer. Unfortunately, only 4 out of those 5 will survive. So we will lose 1 child every year to childhood cancer until we can get to a point where we can find research that can find and conquer kids' cancer. When we look at the different types of cancer, there are varieties of them. We are honoring 2 children this year, one who has ALL and another who has a very rare form of cancer that we are proud to honor as fighters against childhood cancer. The other reason we exist, only 4% of all government grants for cancer is dedicated to child cancer research. So what about St. Baldrick's and why are we here today? Since 2000, when the organization was founded, we've had close to 6,000 events. We have raised over $152 million. When we look at the administration fees for St. Baldrick's, they are only 2%. So we truly are a volunteer-driven organization. We've had 250,000 people shave their heads, and over 25,000 of them have been women. Missy will give you a little more specifics on what we will be doing here in Indian River County, some of the women that we will be shaving, and some of the gentlemen as well, and how many we are hoping to shave and how much money we are hoping to raise. So it's really research that makes the difference, and that's what we are here to do, is raise money for childhood cancer research. Today, we are simply looking for volunteers to come and shave your head to raise money for these children. Just recently, we teamed up with Stand Up to Cancer. I believe all of you are familiar with that organization, and this year on television, you may have seen the St. Baldrick's and our Embassy Child. So there's going to be a lot of excitement and a lot of fun. It's a family-driven, oriented, fun event. There's going to be a lot of bald heads by the end of the day. And I'm going to turn this over to Missy, who will be very specific about where and when we will have the shaving event. And I just wanted to again thank you for this opportunity. And I'm Missy Elwood.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You guys all look nervous up there. Like we're getting ready to ask you for something. Actually, we are. I just saw an interesting article in the Press Journal. I'm sure everybody read it. It says Vero Beach did not make the top 10 beaches on the USA Today list. The reason being, according to Dr. Beach, was because we are not a community, or what's the word I'm looking for?
A united
We don't have a sense of community.
Right, yeah.
I don't think that's true. And they're saying between the beach side and the mainland, but anyway, I'm a little nervous. 4 years ago, I was introduced to St. Baldrick's through a fireman up in Osceola County. He did an event in Brevard County at Meg O'Malley's. Our first year, we shaved 125 heads. I actually do hair, so I was one of the ones shaving the heads. It was great. We had a woman actually get up and auction herself off. We raised over $1,000 in 10 minutes, and she shaved her head. I think Garrett we did about a little over 100 grand in one day. Last year, I was also in Brevard County. We did it at the Avenue of Viera. We shaved over 300 heads, brought in over $160,000. It was amazing. We have decided to bring it to Indian River County. This will be the first event here. Actually, I don't even think St. Lucie County does one yet. It's slowly moving north. I will be participating in Brevard County again this year. 2 weeks before that, we will do our first event on March 2nd. It will be held at Captain Hiram's in Sebastian. Captain Hiram's has agreed to host our event. They've got the space for us. They're willing to donate anything that we need. We'll be doing an event the night before, which they will also donate the Tiffany room for. Our whole event is pretty much going to be volunteer driven, besides what Captain Hiram's obviously makes off of it. They've given us the whole day. It's going to be noon to 6. What we need our heads. We need people to go out there and say, listen, I'm raising money to cure childhood cancer, and I'm going to shave my head. I need you to donate on my behalf. It's a temporary thing. For any woman that decides to shave her head, I will be happy to take care of your hair until it grows out the way you want it to, at no charge. because you have more guts than I do. We have the mayor of Sebastian already signed up. Councilman Jim Hill is already signed up. Al Minner, he just needs a little pressure put on him. He's going to get signed up. To have all of you, our leaders, up there, and it doesn't matter how little or how much hair you have, it's the appearance of you being up there supporting something like this is going to make a huge difference in this community. We're going to be doing some spin-off events, which we'll keep everybody apprised of. But basically what we need is we need a commitment from you. We need a commitment for you to say, I'll be there that day, I will get signed up, and I will raise money. We will do most of the work for you. You just need to put your face out there. And I do believe I've already got one person.
Yes, Missy and Frank have talked to me in just great detail about the great service of a professional hair cutter cutting my hair. If you notice, it's getting a little long. And I have committed, and I've been told that in March I won't have a hair on my head. Mm-hmm. And with that, gentlemen, you know, a couple of the council members of Sebastian have stepped up to the plate. I anticipate possibly another one in the very near future. I'd like to see as many of us to be able to take that challenge. Commissioner Davis said some of us have a little bit more to lose than others. I don't know if that helped the cause or if it did not, but I want to appeal to you to step up to the plate. The children that we're trying to help financially and with emotional support don't have the choice of what their hair will look like. We have a choice, and I think we have an obligation to show them that we can make that choice for you and show you that we support the cause and perhaps raise some funds to fight the dreaded cancer disease.
And I don't know if Frank said or not, the two children that we're honoring actually reside in Indian River County. And I'm sure they're not the only two children that are going through this. They've been going through recent chemotherapy lately, so they've been having a little bit of a hard time, but we're hoping to have them at the event. One's 4 and one's 12. So, I mean, it's a big deal. And we all have a lot more to lose in our hair. I was almost going to do it. I've got a lot going on right now. I swore I could raise a ton of money because people would pay for me to shave my head for all the wrong reasons, which would have been fine. Next year I probably will. So this year I'm donating my time. So I need heads. We have about 50 heads right now. This month is going to be pivotal. I want over 100 heads. I need over 100 heads. I have 5 girls lined up ready to shave your head. There's going to be press. You're going to spend a few minutes on stage. If you want to say a few words, you can. It's going to be a great, like Frank said, family-oriented event. It's one of the times you come, everybody's happy.
Missy, there was a couple of commissioners that were taking notes, and that's already indication that there might be in attendance.
Awesome.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if today we can get a commitment from at least one that would step up to the plate and say, I will support your cause?
Magnificent.
That would be magnificent.
Yes,
I would love for everybody. I'm just.
And as I hear, I'm hearing crickets, but I'm hoping that I hear some expression.
I will ask my wife, how's that?
I think Tanya will say yes. And you know, let me just point out, you don't have to do anything.
I only have to look at it when I brush my teeth in the morning, so I'm good. But,
You'll go back in a couple of weeks.
She's got to look at it all the time.
I fight with my husband every year to grow his hair back. He doesn't want to grow it back. He says it's so easy to keep it bald. And I was like, well, you're just not meant to be bald, honey. Save it for next year. So that's what he does. But we will help you. It takes 5 minutes to sign up. It's literally not much out of your day. And then what we basically want to do is we want to use you. We want to put you out there and say, County Administrator Joe Baird has agreed to shave his head for kids' cancer, and people will go, wow. Commissioner Tim Zork will shave his head for kids' cancer. People go, wow, that's great. Wesley Davis will be a big one.
You know,
I got a big head, I guess, huh?
I'll be glad, as Commissioner Davis checked with my wife, but I don't have a whole lot to change, so I figure I'm in.
You're taking a free haircut.
Commitment, Commissioner O'Brien. This is just one more week before I got to do it again.
I did the wise thing. I got the permission slip right away.
Absolutely. I think she made you do it.
Now, we've heard on the right side. Now, we do have whole other side of the commission.
As everybody on this board knows, I check with my wife first. I don't think I have a lot to lose, so I'm pretty much game myself. If you can tell me who to call once I've talked to my wife?
Absolutely. There are a couple of things that we can give you right now. On the screen, you have our website, which is a direct link to our event at Captain Hiram's. It's stbaldricks.org/events/Indian River. On that site, there are two icons. One says donate, one says volunteer or get involved. You can go to that icon and sign up right there online. Otherwise, you can call myself at 772-633-4452 or Missy Elwood.
772-643-2893. If I can get your email addresses, I can actually forward you a link that all you have to do is finish. I will send it right to you.
We can make this
Every one of
very
you
easy.
are going to get one by the end of the day.
I don't think we
You
can
don't need
link
one.
that from the county website, so...
No, you can do it.
for-
Do you
or
have
from
personal-
our office because
Okay.
of some
The
restrictions.
firewalls? Okay.
So you would have to get with the commissioners and... or
Do you
we
all
can
have
provide-
personal email addresses that you use at home?
Yeah. That would be great.
Could you write those down for us on a sheet of paper? And that way, it'll save you a lot of time. We know you have a lot of work to do. We want to make this easy.
It should come through our
It should come
firewall.
through?
Yeah.
Okay, do you want me to try?
Yeah.
Here you go, Missy.
Okay.
That's my home.
We will make this very easy for you gentlemen and do everything we can to ensure that we don't absorb a lot of your time. We would just love to have you on stage. This is my 9th year shaving my head. It does grow back, not very well as you can see, but it does grow back. There's a lot of money to be raised for these children. We are shooting to raise $100,000. With your assistance and help, I feel very, very confident that we can attain that goal. So once again, Chairman, thank you very much. Commissioners, I can't thank you enough for this opportunity.
I want to applaud Commissioner Solari as well for going home and making that permission slip request. I appreciate that. We've heard from most of the board. Commissioner Zork?
I'm going to follow Wesley's footsteps as being a great leader that he is and check with my wife. But I do actually have a question for, not that I would qualify, but for those that have hair to be cut that's 9 inches or longer, would you also be collecting that for the, I know it's a different program.
It is, sir. It's a different program, Locks of Love. So if we have someone that does have that hair to donate, we personally will contact Locks of Love and assure that it is done properly. But that is not our primary function, but we'll be happy to contact that organization.
That was actually a family discussion we had yesterday that my daughter's considering.
And one that comes up in every meeting I've ever been to, so certainly valid, and we are in a position to support that.
As a quick question, how much do you have to pay to get out of shaving your hair?
We'd like you to give till it hurts.
We love donations, so we can discuss that.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead and sign up. We'll do it.
Well, that's wonderful.
So I'm
Thank
assuming
you
we
so
pretty
much.
much have everybody on board?
Thank you.
You guys are going to be a handsome
Just, you know, I realize there's some that are going to be asking their spouses, and their spouses do support us, and I'm very excited. Can you imagine for a minute that we might have unanimous consent on this?
Wow.
That would be wonderful, gentlemen. So if you just want to bring that home, we would appreciate that. Joe, did you want to comment at all on this?
I got to check with someone too, so.
Okay. Well, at least you have a willingness to check?
Yes.
All right. If not, contribute to the cause, and that could be
It won't be a big issue for me. It's like other people.
Or you could do both, too. You can contribute and have your hair cut. Thank you.
I think you better stand a better chance of getting this.
And also, this I would think would be open to members of the press that join us here at every meeting.
Absolutely.
They would be welcome, Henry, to...
Will you look at Henry's locks?
Henry's got a lot to cut.
There are some beautiful heads in this room.
Yes.
That we would like to talk to.
We'll be at the
Well,
first
Miss
meeting
Renfrey may
after
want to volunteer.
after March 2nd, so the next meeting would be the 5th, right? 2nd,
Yes.
3rd, 4th, 5th?
The
I will
5th
make sure
will-
I'm here so I can see what everybody looks like.
So you
sitting
get
in bed
ready for the
together.
shaving?
No, but after.
We'll see you after.
Oh,
What-
afterwards.
see what the
She
panel
wants a
looks like
glaring example.
afterwards.
Whatever moves you will make.
Thank you so
again.
much.
We really
Thank you.
appreciate
Thank you
your
very
time.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I thought winning the election was hard. Now we got to shave our heads.
Shave your heads, but for the right cause.
Definitely.
What better cause? All right, well, with that approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of December 4th, 2012.
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Davis, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Informational items, gentlemen, anything? Next is the consent agenda.
Move approval as presented.
I'll second.
Motion made by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Davis. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Constitutional offices and governmental agencies, there is nothing to discuss at this point. The public items, we have public hearings. Consideration of amendments to Land Development Regulations, LDRs, Chapters 911, 912, and 971 to allow outdoor vehicle storage use in the CL, Limited Commercial, and CG, General Commercial zoning districts, and to eliminate limitations on the length of recreational vehicles stored outside on residential properties. This is a public hearing number 1, memorandum dated January 8th, 2013. This is legislative in nature, found on pages 78 through 108. Good morning, staff.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm Stan Bowling, County Planning Director. This is the first of 2 public hearings on this Land Development Regulation Amendment. Just a bit of background. A few months ago, George Sigler, who owns CL, Limited Commercially Zoned Property in the South County, requested at the board consider allowing standalone outdoor commercial vehicle storage use. The board directed staff to come back with some analysis, and in October, the board reviewed staff's analysis and directed staff to initiate a formal amendment process, and we've been working on that since. The board gave some parameters to the direction back in October. That is to allow these vehicle storage lots as a special exception use in both the limited commercial and general commercial districts, and to incorporate some buffering criteria and restrictions on the types of vehicles to be stored. Our existing regulations under our code allow standalone storage lots in the heavy commercial, that's basically a warehousing district, and our light industrial and general industrial districts with buffering. And currently there are no restrictions on vehicles, the types of vehicles stored in those districts, and no changes are proposed to that existing regulation. Just an example, this is showing a site that's in the North County. It's on the west side of Old Dixie Highway, a little bit south of County Road 512, and the city of Sebastian limits are here in yellow. So this is just in the unincorporated area of the county. It's a site that was developed in the 1990s. We have more stringent landscaping requirements now, but you can see it's a stabilized area that was marl with grass over it. Some semi-trailers are stored on it, and periodically larger vehicles, including construction vehicles, and that is zoned heavy commercial in that entire area. Our existing regulations also allow accessory outdoor vehicle storage at mini storage facilities in the general commercial district. We have some examples of some older projects developed more than 20 years ago. This is on the north side of Oslo Road, and it's pretty typical in these, the mini storage buildings shown here. You can see the recreational vehicles stored in between the buildings. That's pretty typical. More recently developed property on the south side of State Road 60 near a mobile home park, but you can see a portion of the site is developed with buildings, and a portion has the outdoor vehicle storage with buffering around it. Staff surveyed other local governments and found that like the county's regulations, many other governments allow these uses in the general commercial or heavy commercial districts with buffering, but none of them allow these types of uses in the light commercial or limited commercial districts. However, none of them have special buffering or limitations on vehicles in their regulations. And so the board directive was to make sure that we had some special criteria that limited the types of vehicles and make sure we had buffering criteria. And those criteria have been incorporated into the ordinance that's proposed and is in front of you all this morning. I want to just go over some of the criteria that are in the proposed ordinance. One is that the parking surface be approved by Public Works. It could be paved or unpaved, but if it's unpaved, it needs to be stabilized. We have a type B buffer with 6-foot opaque feature where this type of facility would be adjacent to residential zoning. and would have a Type C buffer, a little bit lower buffer, but still a 6-foot opaque feature along major roadways and other types of commercial districts. We also have an allowance in these regulations that fencing with vines is an option for some of the landscape requirements. We see that these facilities are oftentimes fenced for security purposes, and we have a particular type of buffering that could work well in those circumstances. And a typical Type B buffer is 25 feet wide with a pretty significant planting of trees, both canopy and understory trees. A Type C buffer is 15 feet wide, less intense planting, but still a fairly significant buffer. Another criterion would be shielding of lights, as we do in our corridor requirements, and then some limitations and prohibitions, one being that no semi-trailers or dump trucks or similar vehicles would be stored. You could essentially have recreational vehicles, boats, or personal vehicles. No storage of materials. You couldn't have construction materials, for instance, stored on that facility, and no vehicle sales or repairs. This would be storage only. One other item that's in the amendments that the board asked staff to propose and look into would modify the regulations we have on our existing mini storage facilities to make them consistent with what's proposed. That's being done in the ordinance, and also a modification on our current allowance for RVs parked outside of residences. Our current county regulation has a 32-foot maximum length right now. It's kind of an old standard. Many RVs are on the order of 35, 36 feet. And so the proposed ordinance would do away with a maximum length of RVs stored outside residences, and simply enforce the overall area, the length and the width of an RV at 400 square feet. And that would allow for kind of more customary or common RVs. Staff has taken this proposal to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and they voted 6-0 to recommend that the board adopt the ordinance. And staff's recommendation at the first hearing, is that the board directs staff to make any changes to the ordinance that you feel necessary, and announce the intent to adopt the ordinance at the second and final hearing, which is scheduled for February 5th at 5:01 p.m. Be glad to answer questions that you all might have.
Thank you, Stan.
Stan, reading through the wording changes, it's not clear to me that like a boat trailer would be allowed, but you're saying that will be an allowed use?
That's correct. You're talking about on a residence. We have
no, not a residence, in the storage area.
Right. What we would allow are boats on trailers, which is so any a vehicle is defined as any wheeled conveyance, including trailers. So by definition, it would be allowed in our code.
Okay, then what about like somebody that has a lawn maintenance business and has a trailer with his mower and gear on it? Would that be allowed?
Yes, I think that sort of thing would be allowed. What we have is a prohibition on heavy equipment such as dump trucks, bucket trucks, and construction related, but not a trailer like that would not.
Somebody with a low boy with a backhoe on it would not be allowed.
That's correct.
But a guy with a pickup truck and a trailer with his mower on it, that would be allowed.
That's correct.
Okay. And then on the stabilization, you gave the one example. That could just be if it's stabilized soil with grass. That would be
acceptable. That's
okay,
correct.
So he doesn't have to do the cost of asphalt and paving and things like
that's
that.
correct. It still will have a drainage system, but it'll be less intense.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Davis.
I have one on the new large-size RV buses actually go up to 53 feet. And so I know you limit it at 400, but I have seen a number of them around town that 400 square feet might need to go. I think they're 9'4" wide, 53 long bumper to bumper.
Right.
Is to adjust that so it wouldn't exclude the guy that's got one that's 2 feet longer than the other one.
Right. I think the idea is that the vehicles that are as large as the ones you're talking about would have to be in some sort of storage facility or enclosed, but it's meant to allow for up to a 10 by 40 or 8 by 42 sort of thing. So there is a limit. You're correct.
Commissioner Solari? I share the same concern. I guess watching some of these shows, there are some hyperbuses out there. They're double-deckers. There are extended units, and some of them are very unique. They're not only self-contained RVs, but extended trailers with separate motoring units, and I think they can extend beyond that 53-foot mark. That is absolutely huge, and I don't know if that's a concern at this point. It's strongly my concern is that we would be looking at such a large vehicle or a double-decker on a property. With that buffer in mind, I don't know if it would be able to conceal it appropriately.
Right. Again, the overall area requirement that's in our definitions now of a recreational vehicle limits it to 400 square feet, and that's what would be allowed at a residence. In terms of the storage in CL, I think you're correct. Some types of vehicles are going to have a profile that's high enough that the tops of it could be seen over some of the landscape buffering. That's certainly a possibility.
Thank you. Gentlemen, anything else? This is a public hearing. I'd like to now open up the public hearing and invite the public, and I ask you to step up to the podium, identify yourself, and thank you. Good morning, Mr. Johnson.
Good morning, Bob Johnson, Carwin Subdivision. Does this ordinance supersede the covenants of homeowners association?
No, it would not.
So if we had a restriction in our covenants in our homeowners associations, this would not supersede.
That's correct. These are simply county-wide regulations. Private restrictions can be in place and be enforced in any residential area.
Would it be appropriate to clarify that in the ordinance, that this ordinance is not applicable to for residential homeowners association?
I think that is generally the case for a lot of our regulations, that private restrictions are not affected by it, so I'm not sure that we need anything in the code to reference that.
Well, I think it would be helpful to clarify this ordinance for people that or maybe potential homeowners want to buy homes, and what the restrictions are. They'll have the covenants of the homeowners association. Is there any difficulty in adding that to the ordinance?
I believe the question stands that any ordinance will not be superseding the restrictive covenants ordinance that you have within a gated community. I think that's clear and would not be specific or indicative of this ordinance.
And it only permitted in the CL and CG districts, which wouldn't apply to your residential neighborhood.
I think the only portion of the code that would apply is the RV length issue that could be on a residentially zoned lot. But again, certainly we could add that to the regulation. I'm just not sure that there's any need to, since it's true of any of our regulations.
Yes, Commissioner Solari.
I think you may open a box that you don't want to open, because if we, in one particular ordinance, says it doesn't apply to homeowners association, then there are a slew of other ordinances in our codes that people will then question, well, it doesn't apply here or there. I think everybody in the county that deals with these things is pretty much aware that private people in a homeowners association can get together and put together their own restrictions. And I think by taking one ordinance and putting this phraseology in there, we do more to muddle the issue than we do to help clarify it.
Agreed. Council, you have input on that?
No, I agree 100%. In fact, I'd started to pull the mic forward to make the same comment. And what happens is, if you put it in one section, but you don't have it in others, then the way the law looks at that is, because you've excluded it from the others, then it must not be true with respect to the other sections, which actually sets exactly the wrong answer, because it's going to apply equally throughout the code. So either you need to go through the whole code, figure out where that wording is appropriate and put it everywhere, or just leave it out with the understanding that we all currently have.
Thank you.
How many ordinances do we have that this would impact on?
An awful lot. All of them?
So if there's a lot to it seems logical that it would be nice to have one that's an exception to the rule and add it to this one, since this has a lot to do with people being able to buy new homes in our communities. This clarifies the situation.
As with all ordinances, the HOA's covenants will prevail.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Bob, on the bright side, there's no gas tax associated with this ordinance.
Would anyone else like to speak? Good morning.
I'm Jack Rizzer, 1434 578th Avenue. My property is adjacent to the position 50 feet from that property you're talking about. And one concern is the traffic. If you're going down Route 1 north to get to this property, you have to make a U-turn on 44th Street. To come back, you can just about do it in a car. There's no way possible. You can make a U-turn there with a trailer or a boat or anything. You have to go down 44th Avenue, is that what it is? And go by my house and go. There's no way you can do it. So anything going north is going to have to come down our neighborhood in the back. It won't be able to go make that U-turn because there's just no way. Another concern, if there's a lot of vehicles, like I say, in the storage yard, so if they sit there for any length of time, do they have to have tags, insurance? If not, something sits there for a long length of time, somebody wants to go stir up or drive it, they can't go out on the highway because there's no tags. Where do they go? Back in our neighborhood. And let's charge the battery up. We'll ride around back there instead of going out on the highway. So it's my concern is the traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Morning.
Good morning. Jim Applegate, 14445 80th Avenue, Sebastian. I'd clear up a little bit of what Jack was talking about. He's in our area also, Ursel Dunes. We live right on the edge of a CL zone, residential and commercial. It needs to be kept limited commercial. If somebody wants outside storage, let them buy property in a real commercial zone that it's allowed in, and they can do what they want to do there. But you guys are looking at something that could happen 50 foot from where people live. CL zone is limited for a reason. It's always been limited for a reason, and there's no reason you should have to change that. There's no good that can come from this amendment. All those pictures he showed up there were of commercial zones with outside storage. How would you like to have that in your front yard? He didn't show any next to a residential area. You know why? Because there aren't any. There just aren't any, and that's the way it should maintain to be. And staff's recommendations to you guys, the most important thing they say to you is on page 3. Of all responding jurisdictions surveyed, none allow standalone or accessory outdoor village storage in light or limited commercial zoning districts. Period. None. Why would you want to be the first? If every single jurisdiction that they talk to says they don't do it, shouldn't we also not do it? It makes no sense. I've stood before you guys before in the past, and honestly, this one confuses me. It just doesn't make any sense. What is a positive? What could Indian River County possibly be gaining as a positive allowing outside storage in a CL zone? I don't get it. I really don't get this one. I can share something with you, how this could possibly, potentially, directly affect our neighborhood. Right on Route 1, where Sebastian Baldwin Alley is, there's an application before the county now to put in a pawn shop. Now, we don't want a pawn shop. That's a major mistake in the code. Unfortunately, it's an allowable use, and we may not be able to stop it. We're going to try. But it's an allowable use, and that's an uphill fight. But outside storage isn't allowed. So now, The guy with the pawn shop might be hanging his hat on this and say, if I can't get the outside storage, I'm not going to build a pawn shop. But if I get it, of course I will, because now I can pawn cars, motorcycles, cement mixers, extension ladders, anything I want. And I can put it outside. Now, can anybody up there tell me that that's not going to be a total eyesore? Why would we allow that to happen, let alone right 100 feet from a residential neighborhood? Doesn't make sense. This guy, you're going to use the argument against this, I'm sure, with the buffer zone, which I'm going to attack quite thoroughly here. As a buffer, he'll come in there, and even if he closes up 3 sides of this, he still has to leave one of it wide open to take cars that he's bought out of a pawn shop or buses or whatever he's taken and put in the yard. Now, Jack was right on track here. Let's say somebody, his time runs out, now the car goes up for sale. That's what pawn shops do. It's outside storage. You allow them to put it there. This guy's going to come, he wants to buy that car, that piece of crap. You know it's not a new one. First thing he wants to do is fire it up. Now you got to listen to it. Now you got to smell it. Buffer zone isn't going to stop any of that. Next thing he wants to do is take it for a ride. No plates, no license, no insurance. Is he going to drive it out on Route 1? Never happened. He's going to sneak into the neighborhood, drive around, see if this car runs, come back and try to make a deal. So again, the buffer zone's not doing the job. Plus, I've got pictures here of the outside storage in the Melbourne corridor. It was just on the front page where the councilmen there are complaining that going into Melbourne from us into South County is an eyesore. It's a blighted area, and they want to do something about it. They want to clean it up. One of the things they want to clean up is the outside storage. It just is ugly, and you can't make it not ugly. As for the buffer zones, the property in question that Jack was talking about, CL zone, you guys just approved a few years ago a professional complex there, office and professional. You told us, and I have it right here in writing, you would give us a 10-foot wide buffer, 4 foot high. You promised that. Here's the pictures of it right here. I'll gladly show them to you if you'd like to see it. It's 2 foot high and 2 foot wide. We've constantly complained about it to everybody, and nothing has been done. I was actually told by one department that, well, it'll grow. Well, it's been there 3 or 4 years. It grew 2 feet. Here's your buffer zones. You don't do them. Okay, I shared with you our problems about what could happen. I'm sure you didn't even look at that to happen. You don't want to be the only one doing it. Let's look at the exact definition of a CL zone, limited commercial district. The CL limited commercial district is intended to provide areas for the development of restricted commercial activities. The CL district is intended to accommodate the convenience, retail, and service needs of area residents, minimizing the impact of such activities on a nearby residential area. Anyone, please explain to me how outside storage in a CL zone will do that. You can't do it. I challenge any of you to do it. You can't do it. What we're asking you for here is not appease a businessman that doesn't want to move to a commercial area. You are our elected officials. Our neighborhood is here representing themselves. We are asking you to do the right thing. You can't make this right. It's impossible. Thank you.
Just so, I don't know if you caught it during the presentation, but just to clarify a couple things. The proposed ordinance does specifically prohibit any type of vehicle sales or rentals or repairs. So your example with the pawn shop buying and selling cars, that would be an illegal activity, and the ordinance would not allow that. It also prohibits storage of construction materials and merchandise. I would think the cement mixer would fall under construction merchandise, and that is specifically prohibited as well. So a couple of the concerns you had with your example there, the ordinance does specifically prohibit those activities that you were concerned about?
Well, if you allow the outside storage for a pawn shop, what do you think he's going to put in there?
Well, this only deals with vehicles, so it'd have to be a boat trailer or an RV.
Okay.
Or a car, but he can't sell them, he can't repair them, he can't, rent them. It's somebody driving in, parking their RV, and coming back a month later when they go on vacation.
So whatever he puts in there has got to be an eyesore to us. You can't make it not an eyesore. Okay, he can't sell them. If he takes it on point and moves it over to Brevard shop where he can sell it, that still hasn't helped us.
Well, he would have to move it out of the county then.
Brevard is out of the county.
Right.
These guys own pawn shops in both areas. They're going to take it in Sebastian and then move it out. But in the meantime, you said he can store it there. Now he can't store it there. So why should we even give him that option?
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Yes. Jim, I appreciate the points that you make, and I think really as this came forward, this was somebody down at the south end of the county, and I understand this is going to be a county-wide policy. I get that. And I think really to add that level of comfort that you are concerned about is, perhaps as you come into Indian River County and look at a storage facility right there as you go in, this board will have the discretion of being able to say, through the special exception use, it has to go all the way through every level of government, more so even than a mining operation. It has to go through more than that in order to get approval. And so this, what really predicated this from my behalf is this gentleman, Mr. Sigler, specifically. And if you look at the South County master plan that we've kind of tried to put together down there, instead of having a bunch of small hodgepodge developments come together, we tried to do a novel idea called planning. And as we were down there, many of these, unlike where you live there in Roseland, there's some rather restrictive property owners association rules, and those property owners association rules are making it prohibitive for anybody to be able to have some of this outdoor, like I'm thinking more specifically boats and campers of some kind that you are concerned about. That is a legitimate concern. This area that specifically where Mr. Sigler comes in at this point, this kind of makes sense. Perhaps where you're talking about and in conjunction with other businesses, that may not make sense. And so I think really what we're trying to do here is to throw some common sense into it. I really respect what you're saying. You bring up some very good points for a specific location, perhaps up in Roseland, but down on 27th Avenue, down near Oslo Road, where we have a lot of land that has been zoned and entitled, and the communities that are going in there will not be conducive for anybody to have a boat in their yard because of the property owners associations and restrictions. So it's kind of like we're trying to find some kind of a balance between the two, a little bit of common sense, not just for a use for a piece of property, but really what's maybe what I think anyhow is a community need that's only going to grow in the future.
Why can't you just give the guy a variance?
I would love to do that, and if that's the easiest way to do it, I'm good with that. But that
well, then you haven't changed the CL zone. You've made us happy. Give him a variance. If it's one guy, that's all you're concerned about, let him go with it.
Well, and I guess the easiest way to really sum that up is through the special exception process. That's about as close to a variance as you're going to be able that I've been told. Now, believe me, I'm not a land planner, but that makes staff cringe whenever they start doing exactly what you're talking about. But I think it makes a lot of common sense to do it. So I wish I had a better answer for you.
Well, we also have never addressed the adjoining piece of property.
I would like to see those.
I'd love to show them.
Because that's.
I'm not going to look through the building because it's 4 foot high and can't see.
Thanks, Jim.
And that's years old.
Can I keep these? Okay. All right. Thanks.
We'll have to ensure that the clerk has a copy.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I got two questions. Stan, what is the size site of Mr. Sigler's property? What would you get? Do you know how big it is?
I think he owns several parcels between 27th Avenue and 28th,
Right.
and if you put them all together, I'm thinking it's a little bit over 1 acre. It's less than 2 acres, I think, altogether.
Is the site in Roseland that you're referring to, do you know what this, I'm just wondering if we say this applies to sites of 1 acre or greater, so you eliminate maybe the...
We have it. I think it's larger.
Is it? Okay, so that wouldn't help
Yeah, I
any.
think they are actually similarly sized.
Okay.
I don't understand why you want to open up, you know what happens, you crack that door open, and these guys are coming through at a later date. You know? No other jurisdiction allows this in a CL zone. There's no reason for you guys to be the first. You're not right and everybody else is wrong. That's what you're trying to tell us. You're right, every other jurisdiction is incorrect. I can't buy that. We need you guys to protect us here. Keep these guys out of the CL zone. Why is that so hard?
Stan, what would be the process of, as far as doing a rezoning from a CL to a CG down there specifically at the south end of the county?
Well, there is CL zone property along the west side of 27th Avenue where Mr. Sigler's property is. So I think you probably have to look at, there's quite a stretch of CL there. You probably wouldn't want to look at his in isolation. You probably want to look at all the properties, probably a number of blocks there. But it could be rezoned to CG, but it does abut local street and single family zoning on the other side of it.
You know, that sounds like it makes a whole lot more sense. You know, when Commissioner Davis, when you said, you know, we want to throw in some practicality and common sense into this, I agreed with when we had the larger pickup trucks, the F-250s. They are more of a commonplace issue and far less obtrusive to a community, and quite frankly, they're just a little heavier. They're about the same length as the smaller model, just they don't have the weight capacity. And that to me was a common sense application, but this may be a little bit too much, bearing in mind that some of the sizes that we're hearing are 52 and 53 foot. And I assure you that you will see, even though if we restrict it to a 400 cubic feet, you're going to see a double-decker. It might be a little stubby, but then the prescribed fencing or buffer would not come into play, and then would be an unappealing process, the same way as being parked next to a 1977 occupied Georgie Boy, which I didn't support the last time either. Commissioner Solari.
Thank you. I think actually this is an example of how the process works and how it works actually pretty well. I think Mr. Ziegler was fine. He had property and he came before us and said, listen, I used to use it, and we rightfully, I think, said we'd try to accommodate you if possible, but I think that y'all coming before us today shows that there is a clear other side of it. Where I am now is that I don't mind going ahead with the public hearing on when it's scheduled, but I certainly appreciate that there are more concerns than I realized at first. I think that the people in your neighborhood bought your property relying on the code as it was then, and I think that's a very reasonable and good thing. I myself don't like special exceptions. I don't think special exceptions really give your neighborhood the peace of mind that you'd like. And also thinking about it, it seems like part of the problem has come from homeowners associations that restrict certain vehicles. And I don't think it's right to have one homeowners association basically push their problem over to another neighborhood. So while I'd support going forward with the public hearing, I'm not really, as I stand today, supportive of the change. I'd certainly want to do a little more research on my own and have some more conversations, which I haven't had yet on this specific issue with Bob and Stan. But as it is today, I'd probably vote no. But again, I just actually think that the whole process is very positive, and I have no great desire to cut it short yet either. So, but I very much appreciate you and neighbors coming, because it helps me get a much better understanding of how this would actually impact the neighborhood. So not just your neighborhood, but other neighborhoods in the county. So I thank you for that.
Thank you. Your support's definitely appreciated by us. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Jim. Anyone else like to speak regarding to this? Thank you. Please come up to the podium.
My name is Charlene Applegate. Good morning. I'm at 14445 80th Avenue, and I just have one comment that I'd like to make while you're considering the other side. My husband said a lot of things, but there are school children in our neighborhood, and when you look at that neighborhood that the CL will affect, you have two crossroads. You have 143rd and 144th. and those children are picked up and dropped off from those buses. And if a storage unit, an outside storage, is allowed in our area, I know we like to think that people are going to be really careful, but that doesn't fly. And if these guys are going to try out these cars, whether they're going to buy them or not, or see if this guy wants to accept it's at a pawn and give him a certain amount of money, he's going to test it in our neighborhood, and I'd hate to see our little kids hit by a car. So please consider that we don't need this. It's not a good thing. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sir?
Good morning. My name's Dave Stewart, 14425 80th Avenue in Sebastian, and I just totally agree with everything Jim said. We've looked at this, analyzed it, reanalyzed it, and we'll be doing more of that. One thing I'd like to point out with what's before you, I'd like to recommend that you take the residential section, that recommendation, and handle it as a separate issue. This is really fogging up the CL and the CG, because then you come back, try to put limitations on vehicles in residential areas, which you do need to do, but together as one proposal as is, particularly in a hearing, would kind of fog things. To make it more clarified, if you could separate that out, I think the public would definitely appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Anyone else like to speak upon this issue? Please come up to the podium, ma'am. Thank you.
Hi. My name is Nancy Gaber. I live at 14465 80th Avenue. Where we live in our neighborhood, it's just a narrow strip of land between the river and US 1. So anything negatively that happens really impacts us a lot. And it does seem unfair where you have other neighborhoods that are protected and with their own covenants. That if we don't have that sort of thing that affects us and directs things like that towards us. I've lived in different parts of Florida. I'm a native Floridian. I lived on Coral Gables. I've lived in Miami Beach. I've lived in different areas. They have strict regulations, and it works. It keeps those areas nice. It keeps property values up. It keeps the areas nice. There's a reason for those regulations. I can't imagine what changing this would do that would create a positive benefit for Indian River County. I can only see negative. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak regarding this topic? Anyone else? Thank you. The public hearing is now closed, and we appreciate all of your input. As Commissioner Solari suggested, this is a process, and we do have a requirement to have a few public hearings regarding this. This is a very important decision regarding zoning, and we appreciate your attendance as well, and probably anticipate your attendance on the next meeting. At this point, I do share some serious concerns about vehicles of this type being so close to your residence, as I have not supported it a change like this in the past. I will say that we have a tremendous obligation to ensure your property rights, and I stand strongly for your property rights representing you. But I have another concern. I don't know necessarily how we can discern a commercial vehicle, commercially owned vehicle, as well as a recreational, privately owned recreational vehicle. They're both of the same size and style and type and weight, and they have the same propensity for all of the dangers or harms that you talk of. I don't believe that the difference in a tag or ownership should force us to compel us to say, keep that on your property. However, if you're commercially owned, you must store it in a storage facility under lock and key or underneath a housed environment away from the general public. I don't know how we discern that. Most certainly we can enforce it, but I believe that all of your concerns are shared with commercially as opposed to residentially owned vehicles, and in not being able to discern that difference, I don't believe that this is a good change for you and the community. However, we will have a second public hearing. Gentlemen.
Just real quick, Stan, the Mr. Ziegler's case, I didn't see anybody that came forth. I didn't see anybody concerned about what was going on down south. Have you heard any resistance or anything like that?
We have not at this point. Staff is in touch with members in Ursuline and the Roseland community because of the pre-application conference for the site that's up that way. So we've not had communication one way or another with South County people in that particular area.
I think that's really, this is a good intention gone awry, it feels like. I mean, it's and I don't know that we're doing a service to a property owner or a disservice. And when I say that specifically to somebody of commercial limited, for them to be able to come all the way forward. I mean, and we've heard it clear from like Mr. Applegate, you know, if it's an allowable use, it's an allowable use. You know, the pawn shop it's an allowable use. But to go in there with perhaps a false pretense that may not work in other parts of the area, and I'm just now in my mind trying to work on some of the protections as far as from Mr. Ziegler. If he came in with and got a commercial general zoning down there on 27th and to make it compatible of some kind with the other property owners along the edge of 27th Avenue, the protection that you would be able to afford the residents then would be through the site plan process as far as with our buffers and the requirements for the corridor and et cetera. Correct?
That's correct, but there are criteria for going from rezoning from CL to CG in our code and in our comp plan. We tend to not put CG right next to single family. I think what staff can do is this. You know, we've heard the concerns. We have a hearing scheduled for February 5th. Yes. Staff will look at alternatives in taking action on an ordinance or the rezoning alternative and look into those. I think there are actually right now these standalone outdoor vehicle storage areas are not allowed in CG. So we're talking about really both districts in this particular ordinance. But there may be other factors too to take into account. So what staff is certainly prepared to do is come back on February 5th with some alternatives.
Okay. I appreciate that.
And with no promise of, you know, it'll be up or down, and there'll be things that you all can look at, but no promises in terms of adopting something.
Could you also include or consider that if a site is also surrounded by CL on its 4 adjoining property sides, or 3, if obviously one of them being the frontage, that might be an allowable, and when it abuts something other than a commercial zone district, it wouldn't be allowed?
Well, we'll certainly look at a lot of alternatives, and obviously we're open to any discussions you all might want to have with us.
Okay. And I know that they'll probably be involved, but make sure that some of the people that spoke today are certainly kept in the loop.
Certainly we do, and we have their email addresses, and we're keeping them advised.
Right.
And anyone that wishes to have their information or receive that information, please provide a manner or method in which we can contact you and notify you. I'm sure Stan would appreciate the opportunity to do that or attend any other future meetings. Again, February 5th, we will have another hearing, and we anticipate your presence. Gentlemen, anything else?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the public discussion items, which is a request to speak from impact fee consultants regarding impact fee review, refund review.
Oh, do we? Do we vote on that?
No.
Okay.
We don't have to vote on it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much for inquiring there and ensuring we did the right thing, but we'll be voting at the next meeting. Thank you once again. And it's nice to see you want to stay here for the next item. And that's a fund review and wrap-up. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I think, I'm sure y'all are just all pleased to see me. I probably should try and hire the lady that just left, because for 2 years I've been trying to get the county to do what it promised to do, and in 3 minutes she talks you guys out of shaving your heads. So I can see that she's far more successful at communicating with this commission than certainly I have been.
Charlie, you can volunteer to shave as well.
Yeah, right after Wesley. I've asked for this time to bring a review and sort of a final disposition of some of these impact fee issues that haunted us for basically for 2 years. The impact fee refunds were brought to the attention of the board in the spring of 2011. After a long series of reviews and errant claims by county staff, it was finally shown that refunds were in fact due. First, the staff's position was there are no refunds. Then the staff's position was, oh, you meant those refunds. Then it was, okay, there's $133,000 in refunds. And then it was $355,000 in refunds. And then it was, oh, the 1%. And then, oh, okay, that's right, it was 6%. So we've had a long progress. Today, almost 2 years later, however, we're back to the beginning, at least on one of the funds. The final accounting on the 101 fund, you'll remember there were two funds, a 101 fund and a 103 fund. The final accounting on the 101 fund has finally been made available and revealed that 332 families and businesses were refunded $1,123,147. That totally exhausted the remaining 101 fund District 2. The records have shown that 100% wanted their money back instead of leaving it in government hands. For the record, impact fee consultants represented about a third of that refund amount. All credit, however, to righting that wrong goes to the county commission, all of you, especially Mr. Solari, who was very eloquent in his defense of the property rights of the people that had paid that money. Mr. Davis and Mr. Flesher were both there and very helpful in their support and their votes. Mr. Zork was not on the commission at the time. Mr. O'Brien has been an avid supporter of impact fees wherever they are, from wherever they come and however they're kept. So we have gone through a time when, despite delays, denials, and less than forthright information, and basically a personal vendetta campaign aimed at our company and our employees by particularly the county administrator, we have now completed 100% of the 101 fund, which can now be considered closed. There is no controversy. We can confirm that all of that was done, and it was done well. We appreciate it. We can put to bed the 101 fund. Despite staff assertions, however, the 103 fund is anything but completed. So what has changed since the last time we were here? Well, the first thing is we have a new commission, and we have a new chairman. The second thing is that we're not talking theoretical anymore. We're talking about real live numbers that show that the scheme provided by staff has not worked in the 103 fund. After months of delay, we have come to expect from dealing with basically a hostile staff. Mr. Keating confirmed that the fourth quarter of 2005, 283 of 355 refunds were made. In the first quarter of 2006, 230 of 282 were made, leaving a total current balance of $98,435 remaining for up to 124 refundees. Now, just a review of the timeline. October to December of 2005, there were approximately 600 impact fee payments received by the county, which then became due on January 1st, 2012. 600 people were eligible for refunds and had 1 year to apply, which would have made it December 31st of 2012. On March 27th, almost 3 months after these 600 people had become eligible, the staff brought forward a proposal to change the rules and passed Ordinance 004-2012. After that, only 355 of the more than 600 eligible were notified by the county. The information now provided by staff and confirmed is that fourth quarter had $83,304 remaining. Now, the original rules for impact fee return were that it was on within that you had 6 years, it would be refunded. This was a promise made by the county. After 6 years, this money would be refunded. Number 2 is that you had 1 year to apply. Number 3 is that there had to be a balance available. Number 4 is originally there was a $200 fee. And number 5 is that there were no requirements for notification. The county changed 2 of those rules before these people became eligible. They changed 2 of them. They eliminated the application fee, and you directed staff to make notification. In March, they changed 3 major rules to limit the number of people and try to backdate the number of people eligible. They changed 1 year to 180 days. They changed, importantly, the time that the clock started from the day of payment to the day of first notice. And number 3 is they changed upon application to as selected by the staff in a first in, first out procedure. So where we are now with 103, and the reason I bring this to your attention is that, in fact, I just heard some of the discussion. It is a property rights issue. Mr. Solari just got through saying that to the last group that he relied upon the code as it was then. That the property rights of these people, when they bought their property, they relied on the code as it was when they bought their property. Okay? The people that paid these fees relied on the code that was there at the time they paid their fee. This money has been held in trust by the county government until either used or returned. In fact, we have really 5 facts left over for you to consider. The first is that there is $83,304 remaining in the account from the time October through December who were already eligible before the rules were changed post facto, ex post facto. Second fact is 245 payees from 2005 met 100% of all the requirements in place at the time that they paid. They completed their required waiting period, they entered their eligibility period, and had 3 months left to apply when they were denied their right to apply or the ability to apply. Fact number 3, any provision of the March 27th, 2012, March 27th was not when you passed it, but it's when it became signed and by the Secretary of State and became eligible, is in fact ex post facto retroactive ordinance that does not apply to the $83,304. Why? Eligible refundees still existed. You cannot roll that money forward to be first in, first out because you are holding it in trust until all refunds are made or their year to apply has expired. Their year to apply for the original group had not expired. They still had every right to be able to file for their refund, but they were denied by a provision that was later passed by the county commission. So this is it. This is the last of the impact fee discussions that need to take place in this county. So who represents the 245 or so families eligible remaining for the approximately 74 remaining refunds? Not the county attorney, because he represents the staff. It's certainly not Bob Keating, because he does whatever Joe Baird tells him. It's certainly not Mr. Baird, who's used all of his power and authority to wage war against people who wanted their money back. Unfortunately, it's not impact fee consultants, because we have been totally unable to be successful we were successful on some fronts, but we have been completely unsuccessful and cannot fight the power, the money, and the authority of a hostile government. So who represents the 74 refundees? Only you. Only you. So, commissioners, it's your choice. Honor or someone's ego. Truth or trickery. I urge you to order the staff to complete these final few refunds. Are you really going to sell your honor for these last few remaining items? Is it really that important to get your way? But know this, you made a promise in 2005 You made a promise. Mr. Baird sat here on television and responded to people at that podium saying, don't worry about it. If we don't use it in 6 years, we'll give it back. Now, do you wonder why people don't trust government? You promised. You have one remaining thing to do, and that's these last 74 people with $83,000. They were qualified. It is a property rights issue. They were qualified. It was their money. And you have gone backwards and confiscated it by staff process. Now, I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I'll be happy to put up with the onslaught that I was certainly going to have of what the defense is, but the facts are absolute. There's $83,000 left. There were eligible people that needed that $83,000. You promised to give it back. You haven't. Thank you.
Commissioners, I think that the attorney should address some of the questions on the ordinance and how it happened, rather than, I mean, there's an ordinance in place and we're following it, and the commission voted on it.
I don't know if we need to, or if it would be right to just put the county attorney on the spot.
No problem.
Well, I mean,
I believe he's well prepared. There has been some active communication, and there has been an address, and I think the public should be aware of that. They've just heard some accusations and allegations, and I believe they should be addressed.
Sometimes when Mr. Wilson speaks, it's literally hard to correlate the facts as he states them with the ordinance as written, in my view. And I think this is one of those situations. When we did the ordinances back in 2012, and even prior to that, you remember that there was, excuse me, there was a 6-year refund process in place under the old ordinances, 2005 ordinances. And unfortunately, that refund process that was in place was completely ineffective. I don't think we'd ever had anybody prior to the board starting to look at that situation ever come forward and seek a refund under the old provision. And the reason why it was ineffective is because the county never gave notice to people that they might be eligible for a refund. And therefore, people didn't apply, and 6-year periods passed, and it just didn't work. You know, Mr. Wilson, for starters, says that in the summer of 2011, staff denied that there were any refunds due, and then lo and behold, staff finally admitted that refunds became due. They really only became due, we're under Fund 101 at that point, because this board changed the Fund 101 refund ordinance entirely in February 2012. Now, when you changed the ordinance in 2012 on Fund 101, you had a clear principle in mind, and that was Fund 101 represented a pot of money that was collected years ago that never got used. It was unclear whether it would get used going forward, so you wanted to completely exhaust that fund through refunds. And therefore, you expressly set up a wave of refunds. In other words, you went out to everybody who was entitled to a refund whose money had not been spent on a first-in, first-out basis, and you contacted all of those people. In fact, you contacted them twice to ask if they wanted to have a refund. And in your ordinance, you then went on to say, however, if all of those people don't show up and they all don't want their money, then what we'll do is a second wave of refunds because we want to exhaust that pot. And you had this multiple waves of refunds under the Fund 101. And actually, that system has worked perfectly well. I think all of the Fund 101 money is gone. But roughly 1 month later, you considered your 6-year refund ordinance. Mm-hmm. And the issue of whether or not you were going to do multiple waves of refunds or only a single wave of refunds under the Fund 103 refunds, the 6-year refunds, was an issue greatly discussed at the time. Mr. Wilson came in and argued that there be multiple waves of refunds under the 6-year refund process. This board opted against that. You decided that you were going to have a single wave of refunds. That fact, Mr. Wilson has never accepted to this day. So, as we started actually having six-year refund processes come into play, as we did the first one, we finished the first wave. Not everybody came forward in the first wave. If I recall correctly, Mr. Wilson then submitted an application for somebody beyond the first wave. In other words, requesting a second wave of refunds under the 6-year process. Staff denied that application because there was no second wave under the 6-year refund process. Mr. Wilson took an appeal. Last June or so, we had an appellate hearing. We spent several hours, many hours, where ultimately it came right down to that same basic point. Is there going to be a multiple wave of refunds in the 6-year refund process? The answer, this board, was no, there is not. And the reason is because you had voted not to have the multiple waves. I believe we're right back at that same issue. Mr. Wilson has this vision of how it ought to work. It is not the way that it is set out in the 6-year refund ordinance. And we can go on, we can go back and forth, and it doesn't make any difference how many times this board has made that decision, how many times staff tells Mr. Wilson that is the fact. Mr. Wilson continues to come back and say, well, you're still cheating people out of these refunds. I don't think you're cheating people out of anything. I think you have tremendously improved the refund process. All you have to do is look at how many refunds were requested between 1999 and really prior to 2011 and 2012, which was virtually none. And now we're giving out literally hundreds of refunds under the process that this board has adopted. So I think this board has done a tremendous service for the people and has greatly increased these refunds. As for where you go today, I think if Mr. Wilson wants to argue you ought to change your ordinance, make the argument, have at it. He's made that argument twice before, and this board has disagreed twice before. But if the question is staff following the ordinance as it is written right now, my opinion is that it is. I've rendered that opinion verbally and in writing as many times as I care to. I guess I'm doing it again right now. But I believe the ordinance as written is clear. I believe the staff is implementing it as it is written.
Eloquently done, Counselor.
Mr. Chairman, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Let's start with number one. The county attorney, the wise county attorney, does say that there were no refund requests prior to the time that we brought it up. That's exactly right. Do you know why? Because the 103 funds had not matured. The 103 funds did not mature until October 1st. It wasn't that there was a problem with the process. The problem was that there's nobody eligible. The people became eligible October through December. Number one.
Charlie, the 101 had matured back in 1999. We had never had a request under that process.
First of all, 101 had closed. The reason 101 had not had any request is because nobody knew it was there, including the commissioners. Because for 15 years that money was hidden and Joe Baird didn't bring it to the commissioners one single time for any kind of direction. So the fact is, when we were talking about the ordinance that you're talking about the ordinance written in March of 2012, that prior to that there was a system in place. Now the second thing is part of the disinformation. The staff sat right here and told this county commission in June of 2011 that there were no refunds. And as you say, the reason there were no refunds is because they had not matured. But if you'll recall, there were two classes of refunds. There was the 6-year refund and there's the non-commencement refund. We had made questions about both of them, and there were, in fact, refunds. There were, in fact, refunds made. There were refunds ongoing. The fact is the information provided to this council, this commission, by the staff was inaccurate. And, number three, multiple or single times. It is not multiple or single times. What my quarrel is that 600 people became eligible and you hand cherry-picked 355 of them, disqualifying 245 people. And you did it in the ordinance done in March, not the ordinance in place. So it is not that I'm arguing the same issue again. The fact is you can't go back and forth between the ordinance that you wrote after the fact and use those positions to supply yourself.
Charlie, the first in, first out basis has been there since 1986, 87.
Actually, that is also inaccurate. It was upon application. The original requirements that you had was upon application. When you became entitled on the first, it was expenditures are first in, first out, but your application for a refund was upon application.
But you only had an application if your money had not been spent.
Your money...
That whole group of people whose money had been spent, there is no right of refund whether they apply or not.
Mr.
It's only the people whose money is not spent is subject to refund.
Mr. Plakowicz,
that's the way it's always been.
It is done quarterly. Everyone that paid in a quarter becomes eligible on the same day, and one of the provisions is that if there is a balance remaining. And that's why I asked you, and I got from the staff that there was a balance remaining. We can go back and talk about these, because here's the bottom line. You're too big for me to sue. I can't make you do it. I can't make you do the right thing, because the only way you've been sued 4 times that I know of over impact fees. I don't have enough money to make you do the right thing.
The point that you just stated, though, is right at the crux of our disagreement when you said when the quarter ends, everybody who paid an impact fee in that quarter becomes eligible for refund.
Right.
That's your position. It's always been your position, but that's not the way the ordinance is written. The only people...
The new ordinance. The new ordinance that you wrote after the fact.
It's my opinion, the old ordinance, too. If your money is spent on a first-in, first-out basis, it's not eligible for refund, period. It's only the people from that day forward whose money has not been spent who become eligible. And therefore, it's only those people who are eligible for refund. It's not everybody who paid in the quarter or the year or whenever. That's the fundamental difference that's been at the heart of everything we've had.
I am a poor advocate for these poor 74 people. I understand that I am a poor advocate for these 74 people. And yes, you have a huge power of government to be able to cloud this issue. There's 2 facts that are absolute, cannot be changed. There's $83,000 left, and there were people eligible to get the money back, and you promised to give it to them.
Mr. Wilson, you speak some fact, but it's interlaced with a strong element of editorialization and opinion and acrimonious and disdainful comments about staff. I have a little challenge separating that from all of these negative aspersions that staff is just not doing the right thing. I believe you stood before this commission, with the exception of Commissioner Zork, and did discuss what you had a vision for, and I believe Fund 101 was addressed.
Greatly, thank you.
And I thank you for your input on that. I believe council is correct in that the second element was not addressed the way you felt comfortable with, and you felt more should be done. And I believe that you've had subsequent conversation with council, and perhaps with some of us. I know I have not had any further communication with you on that. So I felt that your approach was one that was come to closure and resolve. Then I recently read a discussion that you had with council and his response regarding your grave concerns for what is happening. Again, that was interlaced with a lot of negativity regarding staff. A staff that I feel is doing their job, that has heard this commission, has heard you, this commission heard you, and the appropriate changes were made, and that staff was abiding by that. I'm a little uncomfortable with all the negativity about staff doing this.
I understand that you are, and I understand this is unusual.
Because I don't believe that they are, Charlie. I believe that they're doing their job. And if they weren't doing their job, they would be risking their job and risking their pensions if they were not acting appropriately in a fiduciarily responsible commitment to you, the citizen, you, an advocate, we, the commission, and all of the other citizens. And I believe that they are doing a very good job, and that legal counsel has been examining the procedure to ensure that it is done right, just, and fairly for all that is served. I know you don't agree with it, and I know that council has pointed out that that second wave just isn't where you want it to be. I again, thank you for your commitment to 101. Again, I'm having a lot of challenge with the way you're speaking about this.
I understand, I appreciate it. I know that we're supposed to come in here and kiss the ring of the staff members.
No, that's not what we're talking about. But I just want to see a little bit of modicum of respect and speaking on a fair and even plane.
I have been doing that for 2 years, and this is the last I will address of it.
You've got somewhere when you did it.
Yeah, well, I can tell you this, that when all is said and done, when I started this, I was very neutral, about staff. I've seen staff do wonderful things. Some of your staff members are terrific. But
I'm sure
I have learned over this time that, frankly, Mr. Baird shouldn't be sitting there. And I'm going to spend the next 2 years that I can do to have Mr. Baird removed from that chair. Because of this and the many other things, and you're right, if somebody has to come in here and they can only get things because they bend to the will of the staff, I'm here to tell you, you have a staff problem. This may be a surprise to you, but it's not a surprise to thousands of people who live in this community. And the way the impact fees have been handled is just one of those problems. And we'll be hearing about that over the next several months. But you do what you want with the 74 people. You have that right. But I have the challenge to bring it to your attention, because the things that have changed now is there is a balance. You promised to give it back. You're welcome to take Joe and Alan's side, but the fact is you broke your promise.
No, I don't believe that has occurred, and I'm stating that it's not a question of taking Joe and Alan's side over Charlie's side or Charlie's side over Joe and Alan. I believe that we had public hearings. I believe that it was well discussed and addressed, and I believe that well accomplished, Charlie, for 101. And I believe that there are a lot of grateful citizens that were made aware that they would do that refund and did receive that refund. And the due diligence on Fund 101 was well thought out and well taken care of and addressed, and I believe that that is mission accomplished. I know you're not happy with the second element, but...
How'd you know?
I just sense it. I sense it. It was, again, interlaced with all the negative aspersions on staff.
The truth is its own defense.
I'm not saying you're founded or unfounded, it's just that it doesn't help matters for the acuity of what you're speaking about. Yeah. Commissioners, do you have anything for Mr. Wilson?
I would just like to point out that, Mr. Wilson tried to imply that staff specifically excluded these 70-some people as some intentional method of keeping the money from them. Staff followed our policy exactly, and all 355 eligible owners were sent a written notice informing them of their eligibility. A certain number of them did not respond, so as per our ordinance, staff then sent a second notice by certified mail to these property owners that they were eligible for a refund. 70, my math says 72, have not responded to either of those written notices, including a certified mail, and therefore, as per our ordinance, they were deemed to have forfeited their eligibility. So I think it's very clear that staff totally followed our ordinance, and again, Mr. Wilson may not agree with the ordinance, but staff did follow the ordinance to the letter. The fact that those owners did not respond is whatever, for whatever reason, but we sent 2 written notices, 1 certified mail, notifying them that they were eligible. And so I think we have upheld our promise. We've done what this board voted was a reasonable procedure to notify those current property owners of their eligibility, and some chose not to respond. That is not a conspiracy by staff. It is not anything illegal. It's not anything immoral. It's following the policy that this board voted and approved. And so again, Mr. Wilson may not like the ordinance, but staff followed it to the letter.
I don't believe they've done anything illegal, and I don't believe they've done anything immoral. I believe that they've done things that spun the issue to achieve a goal that they were out to achieve.
Mr. Wilson, then I'm insulted that you think that this board, excluding Commissioner Zork, who was not here, but I think Commissioner Wheeler had his wits about him, and this board heard hours of testimony, hours of evidence. We had public hearings. I have the minutes here. This was well vested, well written, well reviewed, and this board voted to adopt the ordinance as it stands now. I don't think that any of us here feel we've been duped. I think we all listened to all the evidence. And Charlie, you did accomplish a lot. Okay? I think where you're getting frustrated is you really push us too far with the notification process, because now it kind of eliminates what you want to do.
Oh, no.
And so
no, please, Commissioner, that's not correct.
We have notified these people that they're eligible. We sent a second notification, which is what we voted on the policy, the ordinance. And so, again, we've done what the ordinance says we should do, and I think it's a fair notification process.
No, I'm all for notification. My quarrel is that you did not notify 244 people that I say are eligible and you say are not. That's the crux. That's the crux of the problem, is that I say those people are eligible and you say they're not.
We notified them that they were eligible. We sent them a second notice that they were eligible.
You sent 335.
And they have not responded.
You sent 335. You did not send the 245 that I say is eligible and you say is not. The whole thing is that you have notified the people that you want to notify. You have not notified the additional people who were eligible. And
okay,
the one that you're talking to.
Now, Charlie, you go back then to what Mr. Plaquich told you. The only eligible people are those whose impact fees have not been expended or encumbered.
And there is a balance to that, right? That's correct.
So some of those people you're referring to, their impact fee was spent. And so they are not eligible from the get-go.
That's
and
not
you
correct.
keep trying to say they're eligible, but they're not.
That is not correct. Well, that's where the difference is.
Commissioner Davis.
Well, I think where Mr. Wilson's going with that is the fact that there's dollars left over, therefore it's not encumbered or spent.
Right. 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 Right now, there's $83,000 left over that belong to somebody. And I'll tell you who it doesn't belong to, you.
Now, as per our ordinance, those monies are put back into the impact fee fund. They will be expended or encumbered on a first-in, first-out basis. And
but I think what he's saying, it wasn't done in the 6-year period.
Right. When was your ordinance done?
In that box. And so the question is do we didn't notify him like we did everybody else?
That's right. This is only one group of people. This is from like October 29th to December 31st, paid in 2005 that were eligible in 2011. You can backdate your ordinances because everything that you're talking about, Peter, and you're doing splendidly, and you're absolutely right if you believe that you can pass an ordinance on March 27th that disenfranchises somebody who is already eligible. Why can't you pass an ordinance that changes the zoning to something when somebody's already got a building on it? The fact is on December the 31st, there were people eligible, there was a balance, there continues to be a balance, and they still had time to apply. When you're around, when your March 180 days was over, there were still people left over that had a year. They still had 3 months to apply. There was a balance due. $83,000 is there, held in trust by this county for refunds. And you've got eligible people who met every single piece of eligibility before December 31st.
I'd like the council to address that. Council?
I flat out disagree with that. And I come right back to what I've said a couple of times. I mean, this is a typical conversation that we have. The ordinance right from day one was first in, first out. That's how money was spent. If your money was spent, you're not eligible for a refund. It's always been that way. And I don't think anyone was disenfranchised in March 2012 because that principle remained exactly the same in the 2012 ordinance. First in, first out. If your money's spent, you're not eligible. All that really changed in 2012 was we went from a no-notice refund process to a dual notice refund process. One other thing I want to make clear, Mr. Wilson said that, well, Plaquich represents staff, and therefore he's kind of supporting staff and bending over backwards to support staff. I want to make it clear, under our code, I report directly to this board. You hire me to represent you. Joe Baird doesn't hire me. I don't report to Joe Baird. I report to you guys. And my job, as I view it, is to take the ordinances as you have passed to your intent as you have expressed in your ordinances and make sure that staff is complying with them. If I thought for a moment that staff was not following the ordinance as you intended it, as you wrote it and intended it to be, I would be the first one objecting. And I think over the period of time that I've been here, there have been instances where I've disagreed with staff's view on issues as they've come up. On this issue, I believe staff is doing exactly what the ordinance called for them to do, and I don't believe that anyone was disenfranchised. I do believe that basic principle has been with us from day one, and I think this board has done a tremendous service to the people of Indian River County by adding that dual notice provision where none previously existed. But I represent you people. I don't represent staff, only on a secondary basis to make sure that your ordinances are carried forward.
Thank you, Councilor. Commissioner Solari?
Two things. One, Charlie, if I remember correctly, at the beginning when you came up, you said that you should take some lessons from Missy.
Yes.
And I agree with you 100% there.
Thank you.
The second thing...
She was a lot nicer. I'll tell you what, you give this money back, I'll shave my head. How's that?
For the county attorney, how many initial, on the Fund 103, how many initial notices did we send out?
355.
Well,
here's what happens.
No, for the county attorney, thank you, Charlie, I'll let him answer, okay, since he does work for the board. Appreciate it.
Well, I can't tell the exact number. I can tell you the process. Here's what happens. You get to the end of the quarter, 6 years later, you find that, for example, let's pick a number, $100,000 of impact fee collected in the quarter 6 years ago was not spent. What staff does is they then go to the last impact fee that was paid in that quarter 6 years ago, and they say, okay, and for example purposes, let's say the impact fee was $2,000. So they start going back, okay.
So you send out 50 notices?
Yeah, they go back to, it would be 50 notices in that situation, because in that situation, everybody else who
And
paid...
some of the people don't apply to the notice?
That's right, some don't respond.
And that
to
leaves a
notice.
balance?
That leaves the balance,
Okay,
which is what
okay,
Mr.
so I was just trying to get certain facts, so you just try to say it in the simplest way I could. It's January, February, and March. One person applies, puts $100 in impact fees in January, one person puts 100 impact fees in February, one person puts $100 in impact fees in March, $300 in impact fees. The first $100 is spent. These $200, two notices go out, one person applies for the notice, and one person doesn't. Leaves $100 left in the impact fee fund, but that first $100 has already been spent. That person no longer has a right to any impact fee funds. That's what leaves a balance. So all I can say is that's how I understand it, and that's how I understand the ordinance, and I believe it's been correctly applied.
Let me just give you this one example, and then I'll sit down, okay? What he's talking about, what Alan Polakowicz is talking about, is let's say that whole thing went through, and your 355 people that you supposedly decided were more eligible than the other people. So you gave 355 people a notification. They had 180 days from the time that they were notified, which was in April. Their time expired in October, right? Because the 180 days was done. There is still a balance. $83,000 is still a balance. And that is still a refund balance, and those people from December of 2005 now are eligible to apply for that $83,000.
Well, that's where we disagree.
I don't know how you can just make the $83,000 disappear. It's because of the overlap between the 180 days and the 1 year. The people previously qualified still have time left on their application period after what you're talking about where the money's been spent. So the 355 people who have asked for their money and the people who have passed on their money are all now ineligible. But there remains a balance, $83,000. And there remain people who met all of the eligibility requirements in December of 2011 and had until December of 2012 to apply, were not notified, and were prevented.
That's incorrect, because they were notified, and they were sent a certified mail a second time to notify.
What he's talking about? No, they're not notified.
Okay, again, it goes back to if your impact fee was spent, you're not eligible, regardless what Charlie says. The 355 people whose impact fees were not spent were notified. Okay? Some of them didn't respond, so they were sent a second certified notification, and some of them still have not responded, but they have been notified of the eligible impact fee people in that quarter, all the eligible ones have been notified at least
Yes.
twice.
Right. I agree with that.
I agree.
I think we're all in the same, but I think where we start splitting hairs as we go further down this road is okay, if there's impact fees that have not been spent, then when the next cycle starts, then what do we do? And it's kind of like there is not a next cycle now.
Well, it's not ever going to happen again. I mean,
I
Joe's
know
going to
that.
spend
I
every
know
single
that.
penny in the
I'm
the
clear
government
on
ever
that,
collects.
but
Make sure that doesn't happen.
We have unspent impact
It's just
fees.
this one last
We're getting into that.
$83,000.
But that's, and I think that, I mean, I'm not saying that Alan's not interpreting the policy right. You are. But I think it's another question that
Y'all do what you want. There's $83,000 sitting there. There's 74 people, there are 200 people that qualify, 74 refunds that should be given. Y'all do what you want.
and that's because that's because you contend that we're in a new phase.
You're in a new phase. They still have the ability and have been barred from being able to apply as they were told in 2005. Under the rule of 2005, not the rule of 2012, the rule of 2005 when they paid the fee.
Thank you, Charlie. Commissioner Zork.
Yes, I'd like to open up with a couple things. First, prior to my filing to run for office, I did have a relationship with impact fee consultants. Once I filed to run, I suspended any activity that had anything to do with the county. But since 1985, myself and I see Peter Robinson left the room, we have worked on and been against or fought vigorously against the implementation of impact fees, the language, the Dr. Nicholas rules, a lot of the different aspects. But I see this occurrence happening each quarter for the following reason. One, I don't think there's a question that there's $83,000 of unclaimed money from that quarter. According to case law, and maybe Alan can tell me if I'm right on this or not, just to compare with the attorney I use in Tallahassee when I do this work in other areas around the state, is that the only two legal expenses out of an impact fee fund are to spend and encumber or refund. That's the only two legal expenditures from a fund. Is that your understanding?
I think that's probably true.
Okay.
Yep.
So-
You spend or encumber in accordance with the purposes of that impact fee.
Right, okay. So at the end of each quarter, if the ordinance was written at 11:58 p.m. on the last day of the quarter, anybody that hadn't applied up to that point became ineligible. The remaining amount of money that had not been filed to claim, in this case the $83,000, the 2-minute window applies for a snapshot of who are the people that the $83,000 would belong to. So our ordinance ends at 11:59 p.m., and as soon as the $83,000 becomes ineligible, the next people that are eligible are automatically ineligible because the clock ticked past midnight, and now they're locked out and they can't apply. So it's almost like we need to have an ordinance end 2 minutes before midnight to have a provision for these. But this situation will occur at the end of each eligible quarter, I think, over and over again, because you'll always have some people that won't apply, and what happens to the people that become the second round. And if the only two eligible expenses out of the fund are to legally spend the fund within the time period it was collected, spend or encumbered, or refund it, I don't see how that, whatever the balance happens to be, this particular quarter in question is the 83, how it can be spent on something forward, because spending it beyond its time period, I think, is in question. And I don't know if there's, I use Fowler White in Tallahassee in my lobbying group that I work with in Tallahassee, because I do this work not just here, but in other areas of the state. So it is complicated, and having an ineligibility time on a clock and eligibility time on the clock being the same moment in time kind of creates this window problem.
Well, Commissioner Zork, if I can add, you asked me the question were we limited to spending it or refunding it, and I said yes, those are the two general restrictions. But then in your next few sentences, you added the time factor, which wasn't part of what you asked me. The time factor, I think, puts us into the refund situation. If we exceed, if we exceed the time, then at that point, we have an obligation to refund it back to the person who paid it, if we didn't spend their money. Now, I believe we meet that obligation by going to that person with one notice, two notices, says, okay, you're eligible, give us the information who to pay it to, and here comes your money. And if they choose not to apply for that refund, at that point, I think we have met our responsibility with respect to the time factor. As long as we take that money and put it back in the fund and spend it for roads or schools or whatever, I think we've met our obligation. And I think the more we talk, it really comes back to the same question, which is when let's say there were 50 people eligible for a refund at the end of a quarter because we didn't spend their money on a first in, first out basis, and we go to those 50 people and 40 apply and 10 don't, what do we do right there at that junction? And that's the question that the board faced in Fund 101, and it then faced a month later in March of 2012 in Fund 103, which is what we're talking about right now. In 101, the board clearly said, we want to take that money for those 10 people who didn't apply and hold a second wave of refunds.
Right.
And that was written into the ordinance that way. But in Fund 103, they said, no, we don't want to have that second wave of refunds at that point. Plaquemine is telling us we've met our obligation with respect to those people whose money has not been spent by offering them a refund. If they don't take it, the county can legally put it into the impact fee fund and spend it for those purposes. So that's what the board did. And that's where we have this tug of war. But the ordinance is clear in saying on Fund 103, there is not that second process, which I think is really what you and Charlie are talking about having. But it just...
Well, I think as you have the catch-22, immediately the second people become eligible, or the first group becomes ineligible, the second group, the clock has struck midnight, now they're not eligible either, but it's in what you call a Tier 2 type disbursement. If you have the unclaimed portion, do you address it or just let it go away? And at some point, whether it's here or another jurisdiction, somebody will probably ask the question.
That unclaimed portion, if there is an unclaimed portion, does that mean the county didn't spend those people's money that the first in, first out accounting told us their money was spent?
Oh, no, I don't think, I think the first in, first out is pretty clear. That, in this case, we have staff saying there's 83,000 that was eligible that was unclaimed, so it would have to be sort of staff providing the unclaimed eligible. Since we know that it's eligible, it's just the people who didn't claim it. Does it go next down the list? And I know that when the new ordinance was adopted by the prior commission.
Right at that juncture, that's where the decision was made.
And I don't know if the understanding was that they didn't think how this scenario that occurred. And I think the midnight question of becoming eligible and ineligible was in one of the discussions at one of the tapes that I had watched at one time. And actually at the end of each quarter, you're going to have some lump of money that's eligible, but as determined by staff, but become ineligible because the clock has struck midnight, and now the people that could have applied didn't apply, or people that weren't.
You would be correct, Commissioner, if there were not overlapping time frames. The reason that does not apply in this case is there are overlapping time frames. The thing that was written in March by the staff has a 180-day expiration.
Right.
The people that were qualified in December have a 1-year expiration. When you overlap the two of them, the people that were still qualified in December still have 3 months left.
Well, that is true.
That were not included. And that's my point, is this is just a one-time situation that is caused by the overlapping lengths. If the ordinance had been written for 9 months instead of 6 months, everybody would have expired at the same time. But the people in October through December of 2011 do not expire until December of 2012. The people that were done in March expire in October. So from October through December, you have eligible people, and you have an $83,000 balance. You cannot spend that money for anything except those people who were eligible and a refund balance existed.
I will, let me say this. We have done the refunds according to your ordinance. You argued this before. You made the ordinance with the exception of Commissioner Zork, and the commission unanimously approved the ordinance. We have done the refunds. I do say one thing, we need to pass a civility ordinance here, because I am very tired of my staff being personally attacked by Mr. Wilson. His emails are just out of hand. I've been attacked, which is okay. I mean, I've heard from the community prior to him getting up at the podium and saying he's after me. He's even told me he's going to vote against me here. And I think it becomes pretty evident listening. But I think this is so out of hand with the personal attacks. I need to stop. We have gone by your ordinance. It was In a public meeting, you guys made this decision, not staff. And I think this is just totally wrong. And I do not appreciate my staff being attacked.
Thank you,
Do
John.
not.
I
And
think we
I'm
addressed it.
disappointed in this commission not standing up for them. Very disappointed.
Joe, I think that we addressed that, and we pointed out that...
And I mean, it's pretty obvious
Mr.
he's got a
Wilson,
personal attack against us.
Mr. Wilson has been rather negative about his statements and has cast a lot of negative aspersions towards staff, and they were unwarranted. And we appreciate the staff, council, following through with the decisions that are made here at the county commission, and I don't believe it was appropriate, but Mr. Wilson, perhaps maybe you want to choose a different tact in the future. It would be greatly appreciated. I know that when you have done so, you've done a lot of good, and I think at this point, maybe it's an element of desperation.
No, it's not
frustration.
desperation. I
But
can't...
when you go negative like that, you're going to get underneath the dander.
Nancy
and it's
Woods
not a
is-
defense mechanism that you're bringing out.
Nancy
and
Woods
that's what you thought it was.
and Dory Roy are perfectly, probably the best public employees I've ever dealt with, and she's been the one handling all these refunds. They're wonderful people. All the emails we got, one of the things that did point out is that Jason Brown is a good team player for the staff, but I believe Jason Brown is truthful and provides all the accurate information. So I will change one tactic, and you're right, it is negative, but you know what? Glossing over the truth isn't the truth.
No, but negativity is not going to change the truth either, Charlie.
It is
and I
not
think
going to
that's
change
what
the
you're
truth.
attempting to do, and we're not going to tolerate it.
But I will, the staff is under the direction of Mr. Baird, and so my quarrel will, from here on out, I agree with you, should not involve them. It should involve Mr. Baird, and he's the person responsible for what I believe is an absolute terrible mistrust of judgment.
And Mr. Baird is following through with the direction of this commission, and I believe that fairly, appropriately, and justly, and he has carried out what had to be done. I think he and Jason Brown are highly fiduciarily responsible individuals that have been committed to our direction. However, if you in any way want to discuss this and point out specifics, areas that we might be concerned about, then I would like to hear them. But I would like to hear them factually, Charlie, not with the editorialization, and I believe you started off in a very flowery-like manner, but was not a positive flower.
Well, thank you. I certainly will do that, and it'll be, yes, I do plan to come back before this board with discussions of items of Mr. Baird's public and employment history. We have, actually, I'm leaving here to form a political action committee whose responsibility it is to raise money and organize people for the express purpose of supporting candidates who will agree to remove Mr. Baird from his seat. So it is very clear that I believe that Mr. Baird has mismanaged this process and he should not be there. And if that's negative, then I'm afraid it is.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
With that, we're going to take a 5-minute recess.
Okay.
Oh, my gosh.
Let's do it.
Call the meeting back to order. Thank you. Appreciate everybody attending. If you just find your seats. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the public notice items. Counselor?
Yeah, right. In front of me.
It's item 10C1.
Yes, we have two public notice items. The first is notice of a scheduled attorney-client session, February 5, 2013, at the time specific of 10:30 a.m., and that's because the Indian River County Attorney desires attorney-client session regarding FVP Miami Lakes LLC versus Indian River County, pending in the Circuit Court of the 19th Judicial Circuit, case number 312010CA074993. There is a memorandum in the book dated January 15, 2013. And the second notice item is notice of a scheduled public hearing on February 5, 2013 to consider adoption of a proposed ordinance of Indian River County, Florida, amending section 100.03 subsection 4 of the Code of Indian River County, codifying and publishing the ordinances up to and including supplement 94 thereto, readopting the code, designating the code as the best evidence of the current law of Indian River County, Florida, and providing for severability, codification, and an effective date. There is a memorandum in the book dated January 14, 2013, and that's a legislative matter.
Thank you, Counselor. Item number 11 is County Administrative Matters, which is the 1725 17th Avenue, the old jail property. Memorandum dated January 15, 2013. Joe?
Yes, Commissioners. We've got a request to, you know that we looked at declaring the old jail as we know it, or it used to be the Vero Beach Rec Center, as surplus property a few weeks ago, and now we have had the interest of the Boys and Girls Clubs in St. Francis Manor to, they've requested to look at taking it over. Let me go back that several years ago we looked at trying to increase our revenues or to get property off the roll that, get property back on the roll that we owned. And for example, the Sunshine Physical Therapy, which is adjacent to this property, we made them purchase it at fair market value for $352,000 in 2005. And recently the Commission had brought to our attention that other jurisdictions were looking at property or buildings that they own, other governments and jurisdictions were looking at them and selling them and disposing of them to get them back on the tax roll and also get revenue. And because of that, I felt that I had to recommend that we continue to dispose of it, or rather than give the Boys and Girls Club and St. Francis Manor a long-term lease on this property. The property is 3.5 acres. It's got about 16,300 square feet of office space, but it's up to the board. It's the board's decision. I looked at it because of my past my past positions to be consistent on how I had recommended in the past towards other nonprofits like Sunshine Physical Therapy, and based on the fact the Commission had asked me to look at disposing of any property in which we have that we're not utilizing that we could put back on the tax roll and also get the money from the property into the county coffers. And that's solely how I made my decision. But it's up to the board, and I think we've got members from St. Francis Manor and Boys and Girls Club here.
Were you able to, Joe, were you able to locate any of the tax roll information you were discussing?
Yes, I did. Hang on a second. Just had one. You had asked me to look at if this property was on the roll. According to the property appraiser, the land had a value of $144,400. And the total value with the building was $841,970. I don't think we'd get that at an auction or a sale. If you looked at, if that was on the tax roll, just at the land value, the countywide, it would be $2,433 in taxes.
How much is that?
$2,433 just on the land value. But if you looked at the total value, it would be $14,468 countywide. That's including the school board, the city, and everyone getting taxes. Our portion of the land would only be $694 in taxes, and on the total value of the property would be $4,045 of that $14,468. But and also I'd like to point out, I don't think we would ever get, I don't want to mislead the commission, think that we'd get that $841,970. Also in my recommendation, Attorney Polakowicz pointed out one of my recommendations of disposing of the property we cannot do, and I apologize for that.
Thank you. Gentlemen, any questions of Joe before we hear the public? I see there's many members of the public that are here and might like to speak regarding this. Please come up to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, gentlemen. I'm Jay McNamara. I'm co-chairman of the Boys and Girls Clubs. I'm going to talk for 5 minutes. Mr. Schacht is here from the Manor, and he will also talk for 5 minutes. 12 years ago, I was fortunate to become a member of the founding board of directors of the Boys and Girls Clubs. At that time, we had a mission provided by the national organization, which has been in existence for 100 years. The mission is to improve and enable all young people, especially those who need us most, to realize their full potential as productive, responsible, and caring citizens. We also had the national renown of the Boys and Girls Clubs, a reputation that would help us raise money. What we didn't have was money. With an initial grant from United Way and a van provided by the Johns Allen Foundation, we opened an after-school club in a classroom at Thompson Elementary serving 25 children. In order to grow and to have greater impact, we had a goal of obtaining land upon which we would build clubhouses. In the early years, we rented space in Sebastian and in the southern part of county to have 2 rented clubs. One of our key strategies was to obtain leased land from governments, since we did not have the funds to purchase land on our own. And so over time, we obtained leases from Sebastian, from Fellsmere, and from the county and the city of Vero Beach. Able to show donors the leased land where we could build, and with architectural renderings of what the clubs would look like, we were able to raise the dollars necessary to build our clubs. So today, we have 3 state-of-the-art clubhouses, one in Fellsmere, one in Sebastian, and one on land owned by the county and the city. They are within a bus ride for every kid in the county. This year, we will serve 1,500 children in one or more of our programs after school and during our 10-week summer camp. None of this would have happened without the leased land that formed the basis for our existence. When the school bell rings at 3 p.m., many children have no supervision and are left to their own devices. They are in danger of being victims of crime, or in some cases, committing one. The rate of juvenile crime more than doubles between the hours of 3 and 7 p.m. And it is during those hours that children are more likely to be involved in substance abuse and sexual activities. 46% of the children served by the Boys and Girls Clubs are from single-parent homes. 34% are from families with incomes less than $20,000. And 79% are eligible for free or reduced lunches at school. Besides the critical role we play in taking the kids off the streets and into a safe, productive environment, What are the results for kids who are members of the Boys and Girls Clubs? Well, 100% of them participate in academic activities daily. 99% are promoted to the next grade level. 97% maintain or improve their school attendance. 96% show improvement on school behavioral evaluations. 96% maintain or improve their school referral and/or suspension rate. 87% maintain or improve their academic performance. 81% complete their homework before they leave the clubhouse each day. Moreover, a 2010 Florida Youth Substance Abuse Survey of past 30-day use showed that 33% of county kids use alcohol. For Boys and Girls Club kids, that number was 4%. 13% of the kids overall use tobacco. 5% of Boys and Girls Club kids. 15% overall use marijuana. 6% for Boys and Girls Club kids. An independent study conducted by the Florida Tax Watch Research Institute showed that young people who actively participate in Boys and Girls Club programs have high school graduation rates and better behavior overall, resulting in increased lifetime earnings and hundreds of millions of dollars in savings for the state in costs for health care and incarceration. A study conducted by the National Boys and Girls Clubs found that 59% of alumni say that the Boys and Girls Clubs saved their life. So, over the last 12 years, thousands of children have benefited in the ways just described, along with their families. What was the cost to the taxpayers for these benefits? The leased land, without which there would be no Boys and Girls Clubs in Indian River County. Faced with wait lists for our programs, our board is looking to the future for ways to accommodate the children. In the case of the clubhouse adjoining the property under discussion this morning, we have no room for expansion. The vast majority of the land is taken up by the clubhouse building. There is limited outdoor space for the kids next to the building. The land we are seeking through an addition to our current lease would not only provide room for expansion of our physical facilities, but it would also allow us to provide some outdoor activities not now available, such as volleyball, a basketball court, touch football, frisbee, and other activities that we are considering. We believe that providing the Boys and Girls Club with leased land has been a terrific arrangement for taxpayers. Extending our current lease across the land in question would be a terrific deal for taxpayers in the future. Thank you very much. And now, Mr. Schacht.
Thank you, Mr. McNamara.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Louis Schacht. I'm President of the Board of Directors of St. Francis Manor.
Morning.
I reside at 1915 34th Avenue in Vero Beach. A brief word about the Manor. We are a nonprofit, non-denominational, lovely community of 98 apartments. We provide housing for wonderful senior citizens that live on a fixed income, many of whom are here today with us. To be clear, the majority of our residents live on less than $1,000 per month. Furthermore, we offer a socially supportive environment with more activities, parties, and outings than I can mention. Our rents are small, and our waiting list is large. Indeed, we intend to build more buildings to continue to serve our community. So why does it make sense for the county to lease this property to St. Francis Manor and the Boys and Girls Club? 4 reasons for you. Number one, each of our organizations are well established. St. Francis Manor has been in existence for nearly 40 years. We each do an amazing service to the county. The value to the taxpayer for aiding children and senior citizens cannot be measured. All I know is that if each of our organizations did not exist, there would be real ramifications for this county government. Number two, the county partners with many nonprofits in different ways. The $1 per year lease is just one tool in the toolbox. The county has surplused many properties outright to different nonprofits, outright. The Lagoon Greenway is a prime example of how the county maintained ownership of a property, spending money and staff time, and worked in partnership with an adjoining nonprofit landowner to build a beautiful asset for this community, and I think it's great. So I think allowing our great nonprofits to lease, maintain, and beautify a county property simply makes sense. Number 3, in my conversations with members of the county administrator and county attorney's offices, this extension of our respective leases would be easy, logical, and swift. Lastly, this property would allow us to add many more units to meet the growing need of affordable senior housing in this county, a need that is often not regarded. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schacht. And, you know, one of the comments you started off with was that if you had not been in existence, and the same way with Mr. McNamara. And ironically, both of you are in existence. There are several boys and girls clubs, outlets throughout the county, as were discussed, and well supported over the years. We do have that information as well. And in addition, what you've done with St. Francis Manor, affording those citizens that do have economic challenges to have a wonderful environment to live in. And you're to be commended for your work, as well as Mr. McNamara. You're right, there's nothing that negative could be said about taking care of our younger individuals and our not so younger individuals. And you represent both ends of the spectrum, and I just wanted to thank you both for all that you're doing. And you lay an important part in our community. Gentlemen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good morning.
Good morning. Glenn Herron. I live at 1964 Gray Falcon Circle, Southwest. And I wanted to make a few comments about the taxpayers' position on this. Commissioner Fleischer, I couldn't agree with your comments more. These are terrific organizations, and charitable organizations are a defining aspect. The charities and volunteerism are a defining aspect of our identity as a community. And I think the Boys and Girls Club and St. Francis Manor are excellent examples of that. Before I begin my comments, I'd like to read you the mission of the Taxpayers Association of Indian River County. The great mission of the Taxpayers Association is to secure those principles that allows liberty to flourish, and that chief among these principles is limited government. The best way to accomplish limited government is to confine government, to limit government to the efficient delivery of essential services. This will reduce the tax burden of all citizens through member activism. I want to stress activism and volunteerism. We drive this mission and serve our community. Through adherence to principles designed to limit the size, scope, and spending profile of government, we build a stronger and more democratic republic. How then do we respond to less than market leases or direct subsidies to charities? As I've said, volunteerism and charities are an important aspect of our community. However, is it an essential government service to provide a less than market value lease or a direct donation to a charity? Is it an essential government service to reach into the pockets of the taxpayers and redistribute money to a charity? If the Boys and Girls Club or if St. Francis Manor, then why not any charity? My wife, for example, runs Girls on the Run, a terrific charity. It receives no government subsidies. I think it's a very treacherous path to ride when you begin to give taxpayer dollars to a charity and not to others. So I do not believe it is an essential service of government to redistribute taxpayer wealth. I was reading an ad in the paper. It's called the Indian River Community Foundation in one of the local papers, and it says, providing personalized services to meet the donor charitable giving goals. That's terrific. Its mission is to build a stronger community through donor-driven philanthropy. It doesn't say building a stronger community through government-driven donations. So my suggestion to you, commissioners, is, as the president of the Taxpayers Association of Indian River County, to sell this property for fair market value and put it back on the tax rolls. Allow the charities to do what they do without government intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Herron.
Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else like, please,
Yeah, I didn't plan to comment on this, but I just wanted to say, just based on the, Jason Unamaker, City Manager, City of Fellsmere, I just wanted to comment on our experience with the Boys and Girls Club. And City Council there is in a position to evaluate the community's needs and the impacts of an organization like that. And one of the things that they think they considered is what would it cost to provide the services that the Boys and Girls Club does through the government. It would be vastly more expensive, more inefficient. We would not be able to tailor it as efficiently or as effectively. For what we get in return, I can tell you that 140 or 150 kids are impacted tremendously. I personally view it as a front-end investment that allows us to moderate our costs of law enforcement and so many other different costs. I spend about $500,000 a year on law enforcement in the city of Fellsmere, and I look at the resources that the Boys and Girls Clubs brings to the city, and I cannot tell you how tremendous it's been. So I think we always need to be sensitive to taxpayers' dollars, but y'all have the ability at the local level to judge and evaluate the impact that organizations like this can make, and what would equivalence be for you to expend on government services like that. And I can tell you in our circumstance, it's been outstanding. In the city, as the government could not afford to provide the services the Boys and Girls Club does. And it's also engendered private sector support to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars for both the implementation and the ongoing operations of it. So I think sometimes you can be a little bit short-sighted, penny wise, pound foolish in that regard. Thanks.
Mr. Newmaker, thank you very much for your comments on that. Again, nobody here can appreciate that more from my former career. How many lives have been molded or protected or saved by Boys and Girls Club? There's no refuting that, and I think we all agree that Boys and Girls plays an integral part. There are 3 locations that the challenged youth can gain this relationship with Boys and Girls Club within the community. And I just want to ask Joe, I asked for the Children's Services Advisory Committee grant funding history for Boys and Girls Club. This sheet that you provided to all of us, is that accurate information?
Yes, I got that from my budget office. I don't know if everyone got it, but you had requested it, and a couple of commissioners had.
I'll ensure that everyone at least has the opportunity to view that. I'll pass it on to Commissioner O'Brien to review as well, and we'll put that on record. This is the Boys and Girls Clubs for Sebastian, Vero Beach Branch, the Youth Volunteer Cause, and the Fellsmere Branch as well. And I'm seeing a total from 2000 and 2001's budget to 2012 to 2013 budget of $1,098,657. Is that accurate?
I received those figures from my budget office when I was requested, and yes, that's the numbers they gave me.
And basically, it's fairly distributed throughout the 3 main outlets in the county, which is respectfully 327,000, 333,000, 389,000, with a balance of 48,000 to the Fellsmere branch as well. And that information is what has been dispersed over the past 12 years. Thank you, Joe. I'll pass this on to Commissioner O'Brien as well.
I have a copy of it.
You have a copy? Did you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. You have the
Mr. Chairman.
opportunity, gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'll go ahead and try a motion to see if we can't move this off center. I move we try to structure some kind of a lease between the 2 entities. I agree with what Mr. Herron said, where I think we would where we would agree even on this point of doing a lease right now is the county's proven very capable of buying high and selling low. And especially with the bond issues and that now fair market value is what fair market value is, but now's not the time, in my opinion, to be selling this type of real estate. If it was a residence that was dilapidated and we have a structure over there, I don't want to tear it down. What I equate this to, quite frankly, is services that make this community a better place. The Soccer Association, for example, what they do, the efforts they put in, and they have a volunteer board that handles these things. We work out a good deal with the Soccer Association to provide those recreational services. I don't have to hear from somebody about why or how come their child didn't get to play that Saturday, and it'd be a county issue. The Humane Society is another one where we give taxpayer dollars because we do have to provide a certain amount of animal control. And I can assure you that the services that we get from the Humane Society with the compassion for the animals and the dedication by the volunteers is second to none for the services that we get. And the same would follow through exactly with this with the Boys and Girls Clubs as well as St. Francis Manor. So it's not that I don't agree with the Taxpayers Association. I do understand where you're coming from, but in an effort of not trying to buy high and sell low, to go ahead and not, I don't want to tear down this building. Whatever we do, it's going to be their responsibility and to work the lease. So that's where I am on it. If it gets a second,
Commissioner, I'll second your motion. Just, and to clarify, basically you're saying go ahead and have the county attorney work out just add this to the existing leases.
Yes.
Okay, I'm good with the second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Davis and seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. Do you want to speak?
Well, I was going to do the second, but Peter was a little quicker on the draw. And I just wanted to compliment, I've been a first-hand user of Boys and Girls Club through the foster kids we had, and they completed their homework 100% of the time when they were there. Also, just the other training and support that they got while they were there was just, that was my first introduction to Boys and Girls Club. I was familiar with the name, but when you're a user for a year and you see how the kids grow and the enthusiasm they have about going to the Boys and Girls Club, and they're so excited about to go there and do their homework, which is quite a feat in itself. On St. Francis Manor, I go back to, I helped pound the nails on the roof of the first few buildings in there. My uncle, and I see his son Bill, who's on the board, is in here. It kind of became a family project as well as a community project, and even though we might have not been 18 years old, we were all up there on the roofs drying it in and sheeting it in, and they both provide just such a well-needed service to the county. I also looked at the prior portion of the north site has been used by a number of nonprofits. Before Boys and Girls Club, it was the Volunteer Ambulance Squad going back to 1966. Before that, it was the jail site. So that I don't know when the county actually acquired this land or how it got it or paid for it, but it's somewhere quite far back in the time frame. So we don't have a lot of capital outlay dollars that we had put into purchasing the land. The building obviously has transformed over time, but I'm in favor of working out and just adding it to the two existing leases that are there with the other. And on the taxpayers, I agree with what Glenn said, but I look at the alternative of what it would cost. Now, if they were coming to us and saying we would like, I looked at the budgets for both groups, and you're easily over $1 million a year, and if they said we'd like to have the county commission pony up $1 million a year to help run these two operations, we'd probably choke. But if we can help them achieve their goal by granting them a lease, I think that helps. It works well for everybody, and they provide a great service to the residents of the county. And I think the attrition rate at the manor only changes at the point of where they go into a nursing home. So I know you guys, I think you have a 20-plus backlog waiting list, and that's fairly common over there. And I know the residents, I've visited with some of them, they love it. It's a great place for them. So thanks for all that both of you guys do. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Solari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's sometimes necessary to take a couple more minutes than you might ordinarily take when you're going to be voting against an issue which feels so good, and I will be voting against this today. I had no problem with the initial help that the county gave the Boys and Girls Club and St. Francis Manor. I absolutely agree. They do a wonderful job. I'm very thankful for all the work they do. There's no argument or disagreement with that. But at some time, I believe the government ought to cut the cord, and it's particularly in a community as generous as Indian River County. I believe we have the private citizens who are very capable of deciding where their dollars should go. And I do not believe it's appropriate for county commissioners to use the coercive arm of the state to take money out of people's pockets and then decide which charities ought to be the winners and losers of county largesse. I believe that the taxpayers of Indian River County are very capable of doing that without government interference. And particularly during these times when the county is barely maintaining essential services that it provides for everybody in the county, such as parks and guarded beaches, I believe that this is an instance where we ought to sell the land, and if we can put the revenue in the general fund and get one of the beaches whose lifeguards we've taken away put in place a little faster, I believe that is the right way of going. But in a bigger picture, I believe there's a bigger problem that I think that all nonprofits and government ought to be aware of. I'm going to just read a very, very short paragraph from a book, The Good Rich, which was reviewed just a week ago, last Wednesday, in the Wall Street Journal. And it says, "The money that the rich give away," he says, "might be better spent by leaving it to the democratic political process to decide what to do with the money. Read, no more charitable deduction, the IRS keeps the cash." Just understand that there are a lot of people in, especially the federal government today, who don't believe that individuals are capable of giving their money directly to charities. They believe that the government ought to take that money out of the pockets of Americans and that they ought to decide who gets that money. Now, there's the government trying to encapsulate or get their arms around more and more of assets in our society, and I believe that that's direction that this is going. And there's been a lot of talk in the last year or two, especially at the federal level, of doing away with the charitable deduction. And I believe that this will have a tremendous deleterious impact on giving throughout America. I believe that those people who believe in charities and the charities themselves ought to band together and say, we believe that the proper thing to do is to get the money directly from the citizens in the community, and we believe that the charitable deduction is a very important tool. So because of those reasons, I don't believe this is appropriate. I believe that this is a tremendously generous community. I believe the figure that Mr. McNamara told me on the phone the other day was that this community has given $20 million to the Boys and Girls Club over the last 13 years. And that shows how generous this community is. I believe without the charitable deduction that amount would have been less. And I just believe that this melding of government and nonprofits is at some point a very dangerous partnership. And so I probably said just about enough, but for those reasons, I'll be voting against this.
Thank you, Commissioner Solari. I can count to 3, and it appears that that's where it's going to stop. I will not be in support of the motion as well. I do believe that we have an obligation to take care of our citizens and to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollar and the assets as well that the taxpayer owns, not us. We do not own that. The taxpayer owns it. And I believe that the land and the building would be best served in being sold, and at that point turned back to the tax rolls, and perhaps maybe benevolently afforded to a nonprofit organization if someone so chose to do that. But I think we have a higher obligation at this point. It was pointed out about the importance of the Boys and Girls Club as well as St. Francis Manor. Nobody is refuting the importance. Nobody's refuting the impact and taking care of our citizens, and with such mechanisms are valid, supportable, and we have supported in many ways, whether through currency or acts upon ourselves or enforcing acts to assure that there's great success to the Boys and Girls Club and St. Francis Manor. Other things have come before us that we have well supported, and we will continue to do that. But I think in this case, we have an obligation to be a steward to the citizens at large and sell off the property. Thank you. Well, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Davis, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 3-2 with Commissioner Flesher and Solari dissenting. Next item on the agenda is the from Community Development. Thank you, Mr. Keating. We'll be discussing the Go Line Bus Hub Status Update Memorandum dated January 16, 2013, found on pages 115 through 116.
Yep, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, we'll wait a moment.
I think Commissioner Davis had notified us he's got a scheduling conflict and requested a break at this time.
What I'd like to do, just looking through, the only thing that I really see that I think really might need all commissioners here versus holding everybody up, but if the committee appointments?
Yes.
If we could go ahead and take care of that, that'll put me only about 15, 20 minutes late, which is about right on time.
And well, that'd be customary for you.
Yeah, so.
Okay, with your indulgence as the board, and Bob will just have a hold off on that PowerPoint if we have one.
If we have one?
If we have any objection to going on to item number 13, County Attorney Matters? No objection?
No.
Nope.
Counselor, thank you. Please proceed.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, briefly, back in 2011, the board, through a resolution, charged the county attorney's office with the responsibility of monitoring 13 county committees, particularly their membership, their terms, reappointment, and appointment to vacancies. So pursuant to that resolution, and starting last year, we began the process. Specifically, what we do is late September, beginning of October of each year, we review the 13 committees. We identify all of those committee members whose terms are now coming up, expiring at the end of the following December. And we contact those people. And we say to them, if they're eligible for another term, we say to them, you're on the committee now, your term is expiring, do you want to be considered for reappointment? And we, as a result of that communication, some people say, yes, I want to be reappointed, considered for reappointment. Other people say, no, I'm not interested. So we start developing a list of possible reappointments and vacancies. And what we do is we bring the list of people who sit on the committee currently, who request reappointment, and who are eligible for reappointment. We bring that to you in November to see if you want to reappoint those people. This year, you pushed that matter into December, and in December, you went ahead and reappointed most of the people who requested reappointment. Meanwhile, the list of vacancies was created, and we've been advertising the vacancies on the county website and on the county television channel. That list is now come before you here in January with a list of those vacancies for which we have applicants who have applied. There are numerous other vacancies for which we have not had applicants, and those continue to be advertised and perhaps will be filled as we go forward. But today, what you're seeing is the list of vacancies for which you have had applications submitted. I'll stop for the moment and ask if there are any questions on the process so far. And if not, if you want to expedite the matter, I can go right down these committees. And
Council, if you'd like to do that, let's go ahead and start with the Agricultural Advisory Committee, which has one vacancy.
Yeah, that's right. We have one vacancy. The resolution does require that that person be a representative of the horticulture industry. You have had 2 applications received, and those individuals' names are before you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll nominate Robert Lindsay.
Second. Well, I'm sorry.
We had a nomination by Commissioner Davis for David Howard, and subsequently a nomination for Robert Lindsay by Commissioner Solari. And then there was a second by Commissioner O'Brien for?
Mr. Howard.
Mr. Howard. Okay. All right. Do we have a second for Robert Lindsay? Motion dies for lack of a second. Commissioner David Howard was nominated by Commissioner Davis and seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Councilor?
The next one is Children's Services Advisory Committee. Excuse me, you have one vacancy for a member at large, and as indicated, you have 2 applicants for that position.
Move Paul Reeves.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Solari for Paul Reeves, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Any further? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The Construction Board of Adjustment.
Yes, you have one vacancy currently for an inspector or plans examiner, which we have interpreted broadly over the years, and you have had 1 applicant apply who's a professional engineer.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Davis, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Economic Development Council.
Yes, you have a total of 3 vacancies on the Economic Development Council. 1 vacancy is for a local manufacturing representative, and 2 individuals have applied for that position who meet the qualifications as a manufacturer's representative.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Mark Caslow. He's the owner of Dragonfly Butt Works. And he is a small but growing manufacturer here, and I think would be an excellent addition.
Motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Zork. Any further, gentlemen? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Economic Development Council.
Yes, there are 2 openings for members at large. Your materials say that there are 9 applications received. However, you just appointed Mr. Caslow, so he's no longer eligible.
Right.
Also, we received an email from Aaron Bowles yesterday saying he withdrew his name from consideration. So at this point, you have 7 names eligible for the 2 positions.
I'd like to nominate Carl Zimmerman and Todd Howder for those 2
Second both.
vacancies.
Second both of them?
I have a motion on the floor by myself and seconded by
Is there discussion
Commissioner
on that,
Slaughter?
sir?
And there most certainly is
Okay,
discussion.
good. In looking at the different people that had applied and the recent removals from the list, if you look at economic development, consists of 22 people. 11 are represented municipalities, chambers, school district, et cetera. So that leaves you with 11. If you look at the 11, 5 of those are from the real estate community. So we're heavily weighed, not that real estate is bad, but when you're looking at diversification of the board and thinking and new ideas and trying to craft things and move them forward, you're heavily weighted. Now, granted, you have some that are members at large, some are listed under other categories, but when you look at who they are and what they are, they're realtors. So you have 50% of your economic development comes from a single industry group. If you look at some of the other applicants, you look at Kevin Berry in the background of his business, mergers, acquisition, buying and selling companies, that is a person that has brought his skills and offered them to the committee. I think it's somebody that actually brings probably one of the most unique applications I've seen, and somebody that has been involved in recruiting startups. He's also fostered the business plan competition along Indian River County and the Treasure Coast on how to take new companies, how to grow them, how to get them to the next level. Also, if you look at, and that's also a category that's not a targeted category. Again, it's not a realtor category. If you look at John Dyer, who is from the Dyer Auto Group, and people think, well, what would a car dealer have to benefit from this? But if you look behind the scenes of the Dyer family and the Dyer ownership of the companies they've been involved in, the stores that they have brought here and opened up here in the community, different businesses, they bring auto as a portion of what they do. They're a very vast business holding family. And again, looking for people that are new, fresh, and bring a unique perspective to economic development.
Mr. Chairman, just in response to that.
Thank you.
I believe that Mr. Howder brings the same type of things to the table as you mentioned the other gentlemen do.
Mm-hmm.
And the other person that we're talking about is Mr. Zimmerman. He would be the member of the real estate industry, which you think is overweighted.
Yes.
But I'm going to note that Mr. Zimmerman currently sits on the Economic Development Council, and he's been very engaged in this community for the 32 years I've been here in many different ways, including in private business and not simply just in the real estate. So I'm very comfortable with Mr. Zimmerman on the Economic Development Council, given his background and given his service to the community.
And I'll echo that endorsement on the nomination. I believe Mr. Zimmerman is currently the vice chair of the council as well, and I have served with him as an active liaison, and he's had tremendous input, knowing the business community and not necessarily all real estate business oriented. But I believe that as one of our former constitutional officers, he has a lot to bring to the table and has an extremely active relationship with our economic council endeavors and the Chamber of Commerce as well, and a very active interest.
Okay, so will we have people that bring unique talent that we've never had apply for? How do we engage these people to want to help us foster and grow our economic development if we can't get them a seat at the table?
I think that's what we're doing today by nominating Todd Howder, another young innovative individual that works in an engineering firm that has a diverse interest. Some of the things he's bringing to the table recently includes he's been the main catalyst for the air show that is coming about in Indian River County at our Vero Beach Airport. And he's got a lot of great innovative ideas, and I believe that it is the time to have someone new on the council,
Right.
and I believe that we're taking that opportunity now.
And just, Commissioner Zork, you could always let these other folks know that, they're open meetings. I think Beth Mitchell is the chair now, and I think she's always been open to public input at any meeting. So, one thing you can tell them to do is, start attending the meetings, get engaged. They'd feel free to comment and provide input. And then during the year, other openings do pop up. And again, if they've been attending and are participating, then that makes their
Has Carl been on the whole 33 years he's been in the county, or how many, what was the first year he started?
2 years.
Well, Carl's right here, so he can step up
Well, I
to
just figured it
the
might be
podium and
somebody-
perhaps maybe shed some light on that.
The 32 years was the number.
Gentlemen,
Oh, okay.
is it still morning? No, it's afternoon. Good afternoon, Carl Zimmerman, 1786 Coral Way North. Carl Zimmerman's been here 42 years in the community, and he has spent the last 2 years filling an unfulfilled term of someone else on EDC. Prior to that, he spent about 6 years on the Economic Development Committee for the Chamber, and has been in real estate as an active full-time career only since 2001, after leaving as the tax collector of this county, and as was mentioned, have owned 2 other separate businesses in this county during those 42 years. Be glad to answer any other questions.
No, I was just looking at diversification. How do we get that when you have half of the non-municipal chamber members are realtors? That's occupying a lot of space at the table.
Well, Mr. Zork, I would believe, knowing some of those people, that they have diverse backgrounds beyond the area of real estate. Many of those people have had careers. As an example, Scott Carson was both a bank president and an Economic Development Council chairman in his prior his prior state where he lived. So he has diverse background, and I think if you check on other people, yourself included, you have certainly a heavy construction background, but you've done other things in your career also, as have most of the people sitting up there on the dais. So I think one of the advantages of people who've been in the community for a while is to have an understanding of the community and have relationships within that community to be able to pull diverse ideas and people together too, which is, I think, important.
Yeah, and I got these names, which I'm familiar with. These people were actually submitted to me by other members on EDC, and I knew them, and that was that was part of the thinking, since we had a number of open seats. But there's a motion on the floor?
Well, we do, it's not a motion, it's a nomination. I cannot make motions. However, I did make the nomination for those 2 individuals, and it was seconded by Commissioner Solari. Are there any other nominations? With that, gentleman? Yes.
Kevin Berry and John Dyer.
We have a motion on the floor for, a nomination on the floor for Kevin Berry and John Dyer.
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second, just for discussion, if y'all want to discuss it some more, but.
Nomination seconded for discussion. Commissioner Davis?
No,
You just want to promote discussion, you didn't want to make it.
Yeah, if someone wants to leave, that wasn't
Well, they did a great thing. We're speeding this along so Commissioner Davis can attend another commitment. Okay, you want to clog it up any further? No. Is there any discussion?
Are we going to vote on those in blocks? I mean, you've got 2 different nominations.
They were nominated in blocks?
They were nominated in blocks, and I think that we should carry on consistently. If anyone else has any other nominations, they're free to make them as well. Okay, we have a nomination on the floor by myself and seconded by Commissioner Solari for Carl Zimmerman, the addition of, or the continuance of Carl Zimmerman and the addition of Mark Howder. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion, the nomination carries 4-1 with Commissioner Zorc dissenting.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
While Commissioner Davis is leaving us, I'll note that my wife is in the audience, so this is a good time for you to make a pitch for why I should participate in St. Baldrick's.
Well, we still have another item on the Enterprise Zone Development Agency, then we can ask him to wrap that up as he's departing for his meeting.
Russell.
Second.
Chris Russell, we have a nomination for Chris Russell and a second by Commissioner Davis. The original was made by Commissioner O'Brien. Any further? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nomination carries unanimously. Thank you. Commissioner Solari, you wanted Commissioner Davis to make an appeal?
No, I thought, Mr. Chairman, you ought to make the appeal since you've already committed.
Oh, okay, yes. Well,
We'll see
for all of the audience,
how this turns out.
Commissioner Solari's lovely bride is here, and earlier in the discussion regarding these...
Mr. Chairman, while you're doing this, you might want to point out, too, that I believe Mr. Baird's decision maker is in the audience.
You know what? Well, look at this. You know what? We have a dual opportunity, and folks, forgive the interruption, but a very important matter and commitment was made earlier this morning by many people that want to step up to the plate. Your commissioners and actually our attorney has stepped up to the plate, so it's open to elected and non-elected members on this dais. And I believe that Commissioner Solari said that he would have to ask his lovely bride, Jackie Solari, if he could have permission to volunteer, step up to the plate, and become completely bald in support of those children that have no choice of becoming completely bald in their battle against cancer. Jackie?
And what was the vote up there?
Oh, well, listen.
It's your vote.
I came to the meeting fully committed.
It's only your vote that counts, Jackie.
And we have the...
Oh, hey, yeah. Is that a commitment? I join you, Commissioner Flesher.
We now have a commitment. Thank you, Jackie Solari, and we have a commitment by Commissioner Solari. Thank you. I see another individual in the room that may have...
Appointees today are automatically nominated to have their hair.
Well, I would just point out that I've already made my contribution because before I came to the meeting this morning, Marcia told me that in a fit of complete confusion, she called up and volunteered to contribute her hair to the project today, which really blew my mind. So that's the family contribution.
Thank you. And that doesn't prohibit anyone from a financial contribution towards the cause, correct?
The cause will be to contribute to the purchase of the wig that she will wear after having her hair cut off.
Good response from our former tax collector. Now, at this point, Joe, is there anybody that you would like to talk with in the community or in the audience that...
I have the least to lose of anyone, you know, so...
I know, but I think it's appropriate time. I think we're on a roll this morning, gentlemen. We have a few commitments. You have the opportunity.
So Karen, just shake your head like this. Karen, okay, Joe's with us.
Karen, it can't make him uglier. It can't make him uglier.
I'm sorry, my wife's not in the audience today, so I can't, I can't get
I guess I'm
involved in that.
committed.
I'll get back to you on that one.
Joe, is that a formal commitment?
I guess I'm committed.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a formal approval and a commitment for Joe Baird. We have a formal approval and commitment for Commissioner Solari, myself. There are a few that are going to speak to their brides.
Yes.
And, we just might be able to get this unanimous. And thank you for your support today. We're on a roll. Thank you.
Hey, Joe, if you can get Al Minner to do it, I'll do it.
Ooh. That's a challenge. I will be calling Mr. Al Minner today. And if I do, if the phone rings and it's my number, maybe I'll call from a different number so you don't check the caller ID before you answer and commit. But let's see how we make out in Sebastian. That sounds like a municipality challenge now. Let's get it done.
Mr. O'Connor in as well.
Listen, Jackie's right here, and let's, gentlemen, if we can yield a few moments to...
Hi, Jackie Solari, 730 Painted Bunting Lane, Vero Beach, Florida.
I would like it if all of you decide to go bald, to please lower the lights so that it doesn't shine so much.
You may put a screen right up here, Jackie.
This was his recommendation.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. Well, for that minor interruption, I think we've had a great gain in success and support for the cause. Let's go ahead, gentlemen, and go back to item number 12, departmental matters, which is the community development update for the Goal Line Bus Hub status update. Memorandum dated January 16, 2013, found on pages 115 through 116. And Bob. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Bob Keating. I'm County Community Development Director. And as you all know, the county and the Senior Resource Association for the past year or so has been looking for a site to relocate the Goal Line Bus Hub that's currently located in the parking lot south of 26th Street. Now, even though that site works really well for the Goal Line, the city's really been pushing the county and SRA to move the hub because there have been complaints from the neighbors. Now, recently, staff thought that we had found an alternative location for the hub, and that was a city-owned property on 17th Street. And through the efforts of Phil Mattson, we actually have a $1.1 million grant that can be used to build the hub wherever it does settle. But as we went along, and as we reported to you back on December 18th, the county and the city could not agree on terms for a lease, for the county to lease the 17th Street property from the city, and we couldn't do that primarily because there was a disagreement over which organization would actually maintain the landscaping on the property. Subsequently, the board, at the December 18th meeting, the board decided not to go through with the lease. Then, after that, the city on January 10th actually sent the county a code enforcement citation saying that the current lease location is not consistent with the city's zoning, and that's the current location south of 26th Street. And that citation actually gave the county until February 22nd to vacate that property. Now, since then, Alan has responded to that citation warning and actually requested that the city dismiss the citation because the city and the county are still working on trying to find a hub location. In fact, the city, the Senior Resource Association, and county staff met last Friday and discussed the alternative location that staff mentioned to you on December 18th that we've been looking at. And that alternative location is here on the county's campus at the administration building site. And this graphic shows the administration building site, and the proposal that we've been looking at that staff has now is to locate the hub here in the western parking lot west of the building, and actually in the western portion of that parking lot. And all of this is laid out in the staff report that's attached to your backup, and actually I discussed several alternative designs in that staff report. And I want to briefly go over those and show the design that's kind of floated to the top right now. But first I want to call your attention to the fact that we currently have running through the parking lot an access way from Aviation Boulevard to 26th Street. And the reason that access is there is that the city of Vero Beach never wanted to open up the 20th Avenue connection that would actually bring 20th Avenue from its current terminus as twin pairs right down here at 26th Street up to where the access road to the county administration building comes in off from Aviation Boulevard. But basically, this is where staff right now is proposing to relocate the bus hub. Now, in the backup, I identified several possible alternative designs. One design would be 20th Avenue being extended to go all the way from Aviation Boulevard to where 20th Avenue terminates right now. The advantage to that is we wouldn't have to worry about this circuitous connection right now, and it would be easier to design the hub on the westernmost parking area and actually take out that driving aisle that's right here. Now, actually, the City of Vero Beach, as we understand it, the City of Vero Beach is going to be considering the issue of extending 20th Avenue tonight at its council meeting. The feeling is, I don't think anyone's too optimistic that the city is going to agree to extend it, and actually the city staff said even if the council did agree, they don't have adequate funding right now to do it. So that looks like kind of a remote possibility. Another alternative design that was referenced in the staff report that's before you is if 20th Avenue isn't going to be extended, maybe the county could get the city-owned right-of-way for 20th Avenue and push the whole bus hub site to the west and partially encroach in that right-of-way. And doing that, we could still leave this access way the way it is, and there would be an alternative for people to get through from Aviation Boulevard to 26th Street. The final alternative is not having 20th Avenue extend, not pushing the bus hub site over to the right-of-way, but building the bus hub pretty much where I've shown it and actually encroaching on that access way. And that's pretty much the design that's floated up. Now, Chris Moore and his staff have actually taken the initial concepts that we had in community development and modified the design somewhat. And this shows that, and the city was really amenable to this. This shows a access way from 26th Street up in the 20th Avenue right-of-way. It obviously doesn't connect all the way from 20th Avenue, so access would be only from the south. And buses could come in from the south, and this is a design that actually we've looked at in the other locations that we had hoped to put the bus hub. The buses could also enter from the north. When you're looking at this design, there are a couple of things. This black line is actually a curb. So anyone coming in from the south could enter the parking lot here, but could not take a pretty straightforward way up to 20th Avenue. What this design doesn't show is this driving aisle would be open here. And actually, let me show you. This is a little blown up version. So this driving aisle that currently exists would be opened up. Kind of one of the downsides of this design is that it would be really circuitous for the traffic that now is going from Aviation Boulevard to 26th Street to navigate through the parking lot and get there. But otherwise, the design works really great. There's plenty of room for the bus hub. The location is really great for the various routes that we have. The design adequately accommodates the number of buses that the GO line has to come to this hub. So overall, in almost all respects, the design is really good. The only downside is the connection between the two roads. At the point we're at right now, our objective today was a couple of things. First of all, to give you an update on what's going on, particularly since I'm sure that you all realize that the county got the code enforcement citation from the city. We wanted to bring that out, give you the comfort level that we are working on this. As I said, we met with the city. They are conceptually okay with the site and the design that we looked at here, so everything seems to be going pretty well. During our meeting, they did indicate that that February 22nd date is a pretty hard date, and they do expect the hub to be moved at that time, but we'll see what happens with Alan's response to the actual citation. At this point, we also wanted to actually get feedback from the board as to whether or not this site is acceptable to the board. The final design still has a lot of work to be done to it, and as I said, there are still alternatives. The city could surprise us tonight and decide to put 20th Avenue through, which would make an alternative design better, or the city could agree to let the county use the right-of-way and we could move the hub location to the west. But right now, this is, I think, probably the best design that we have in that location. And again, we're looking at getting some feedback from the board as to whether or not generally this is a good location, authorize us to continue to work on the design, and authorize us to continue with the whole process. We do have to, since we do have a $1.1 million federal grant for this, we have a number of things that we need to do to free up that money. We have to do the NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act work, the environmental work before we can get the funds released, and we have to finalize the design, and we've got other things to do. But right now, we'd like your feedback on that. And Chris Moore is here because he and his staff actually did the design. Neither one of us are available to answer any questions you may have.
Bob, I'd like to point out, I thought when we talked about that, we were going to go straight in and move those parking spots rather than going around where people are going to back out into that. I thought we were going to go straight and move those other parking spots over rather than have them here as a block. But anyway, that's okay. We can work on that design. That's what I understood.
I've got a couple questions with this. The citation thing really kind of irks me. Just the city residents has, I don't know how many stops are on the GO line in the city, and I look at Fellsmere and Sebastian, both small municipalities chipping in $50,000 a year, and we get, how much do we get from the city of Vero Beach?
Zero.
Crickets. It's zero. I just wanted, so we get nothing. They want us to move the site to somewhere else. Well, I should back up. They're saying the site that used to house, currently houses the school board, used to house a hospital, then it housed the county administration building, and they're saying that that property does not have a vested government use, even though it's been used for government for the last 75 years, roughly. Right, okay.
As I understand it, that is a hospital zoning district there, and one of the uses that's allowed in the hospital zoning district is offices. And I think what's happened in the past, even though you have uses that are government uses, if they're also offices like the school board and the county administration building was there, those were considered permitted uses in that district. They a parking. I'm just telling you what the city, how the city is interpreting its code. Yes.
It was a government use for since 1981, and when we were closer to there, I used to deal with the neighbors a lot more because we had parking problems. Builders would park down the street, my employees would, and we'd have to clear them out because they'd go down all those streets because it was a lot busier on that side. And I don't know how in 1981 when we moved in, because it became a government complex at that point. I don't know how it was missed that we didn't get it rezoned to that. But I do agree. I will say that, and I just hope they'll cooperate. I will say that you couldn't get any bigger supporters for our transit than Fellsmere, Jason Unamaker, and also Sebastian, and hopefully, it's such an important thing to the community. I hope we can work this out.
Is it, so they contribute nothing, they demand everything and want us to move by February 22nd, just seems unreasonable. but that's my perception of. Now, I know even if we move this, when somebody walks down 26th Street to the Veterans or the Children and Family Services or those things, the people are still going to be walking, traversing that neighborhood, so the geographic change of 300 feet won't change that a whole lot, but I guess they just don't want us there anymore.
Mr. Chairman?
Well, then that is unfortunate because the relationship has grown over the past few years, and I think we've had a positive relationship. We're moving in the right direction, and it sounds that two of the most appropriate locations are being denied or not approved or not supported financially or otherwise. But I do want to thank the other municipalities for realizing the benefits of having a transportation hub and having transportation traverse throughout their municipalities and financially supporting the program and actually assisting with some of the shelter locations and in trying to enhance the system as opposed to forcing us to have to now look at another location and place it on this property so that we can service the community in great fashion with a hub that's so centrally located to all of the municipality demands as far as the health department, the county administration building, the tax collector, the property appraiser, the courthouse, the Vero Beach Police Department. I believe that the hub is at the epicenter and probably reduces the amount of trips that are made throughout these communities because people can gravitate towards the hub, and I believe it's the most appropriate thing. I just wish that we had the opportunity to utilize the area in which it is now currently being served, yes, with porta potties that could be all made right with the stroke of the pen. Right. And we can have the best suitable location for our citizens there or the adjoining property instead of having an open lawn that is rarely used, if ever, for any other reason and was a governmental use for so many years. So we will have to do a little better and sharpen those pencils and make it right for the citizens. And gentlemen, thank you for your hard work in moving forward. Commissioner Solari?
Yeah, I'll just echo the thanks to both Felsmer and Sebastian for their support of this and take this opportunity, which I always like to do, to point out that this is the second cheapest per person per ride bus system in the state of Florida. Right. It's an incredible value to the citizens of Indian River County. And I'll also note for the few people who haven't heard us say this in the past that in the year that ended last May, in that calendar year, we had 1 million customers on this Go Line bus route. So this is a tremendous asset to the community and a very important piece of the community for a lot of our citizens. So with that in mind, I'll just hope that the City of Vero Beach can work with us as well as it can to make the hub, wherever it ends up, work. And I will move staff recommendation to go ahead and work on the relocating of the Go Line bus hub pursuant to the backup today.
Second.
And that's a motion on the floor by Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. I did have some further discussion. Commissioner Zorc, you had discussion?
On Chris, when you're working on this site plan, it looks like it's a counterclockwise right turn rotation kind of in and out, and usually, I know Disney's model is always left turn, left rotation, and they're kind of the best at moving people. I know it kind of fits that. It's not, I guess if I asked you, is this the most ideal way you'd like to do the site with the in and out, you'd probably say no, but I'll let you answer
well,
that.
We could do a better design. What we basically did is we took the footprint of the site, the operation that we were going to put at the other sites and just set it over the aerial on this location to see how it would fit in. We haven't looked at all the different axes, but it's actually a clockwise, the buses would go around in a clockwise manner, and it seemed to fit this site the best way.
Because of the constraints.
Exactly.
Would the left turn rotation be, if you could get the in and out worked out?
Well, it would, the only problem is where you look at the north-south driving aisle on the right side of that hub.
Yeah.
If we were to do it clockwise, it would be opposite. It would be opposite traffic flow.
Unless they'll they'll probably want $1 million for that little canal coverage right-of-way strip of the grant money that we.
Well, if we were to able to move it to the west,
that
which
would
was
help.
Bob's option number
Yes.
2, and use some of the 20th Avenue right-of-way, that would give us a little more flexibility in being
Right.
able to do that, so.
I would point out that if you wanted to look at another way of funding it so that we could move our portion into the MSTU and have the MPO come up with a funding mechanism where everyone pays their fair share and approve a funding mechanism, and we could move it to MSTU, then every city would pay their fair share. It'd probably benefit Sebastian and Fellsmere, and city would end up paying their fair share in our incorporated residents. We could look at that. You could look at that on an MPO agenda. That may be a more equitable way of, so that everyone's paying a little bit or paying their share.
Thank you, Joe. If you would like to speak in part of that, I'm going to ask staff a question as well. Come on down, Mr. Johnson. As far as the design and planning that's going forward, could you also include the constitutionals that are housed at the B building to ensure that any needs and concerns that they have regarding parking, as far as usage there, we do have some usage as far as for the driver's license, and I just wanted to ensure that all of their concerns are at least discussed or met in the design stage so that we can best address them.
Yes, we'll take that into account as well. I know that this would generate significant pedestrian traffic to and from the tax collector's office, driver's license, tags, and we would have to incorporate pedestrian movements back and forth from this side, so we would take that all into account.
And I realize parking in the front of the building is extremely at a premium, and in the rear, there is ample parking towards the back, but there is some usage concerns as far as examination or vehicle assessment or VIN verification that occurs that I would like to not offset the great process that has been worked through at the tax collector's office, and perhaps maybe enhance it at the very least. Thank you.
Yes, we would have to look at the whole parking scheme once these spaces are taken up here, yeah.
Sure. Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
When the reason 20th is not open now is that during the discussion for the reason the county building was one of the traffic flow for when this building was built was the fact that the Piper employees would start being used. This 20th is a throughway and increase the amount of traffic that would go through the city. So that's a consideration that you may want to consider when the reason 20th is blocked off now. It looks like the driving force for this whole thing is obtaining federal grant money, and it looks like, I don't know what the plan, what the requirements are that the federal government has, but I mean, I remember in St. Petersburg where I grew up, when I got on the bus or the trolley, we didn't have all of the requirements that it seems like are being imposed on riders now, with almost a facility. It looks like, I don't know what kind of facility is proposed or what the planning is. I don't know, is this if the city gave the county a court order, like Tim was saying earlier, wouldn't this have to go through the city planning and zoning too? I mean, I don't see what the difference is on what they did on one hand and what they still can do. It seems like you'd still have to come up with a plan to approve the city to get their approval to even using the parking lot. So those are just a couple comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any further discussion? We have a motion on the floor by Yes, Mr. Nunemaker.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. I just wanted to underscore what Joe had said, and that a long-term, sustainable, and equitable funding arrangement does need to be arrived at. We are about $250,000 into this, and we believe in the system. It's one of the priorities of council was moving this forward, and we're very happy with the current state and hope we can keep it. But having a lack of participation, a universal participation, has strained the system, so to speak. And you've got Sebastian, which has put their payments into abeyance at this point. I think we're going to be pushed towards that direction because of it, because we can't be the only municipality that contributes. So some long-term strategy needs to be solved here or arrived at. So we'd like to participate in that. We do believe in the system. I think the MPO has done a tremendous job. So we'd like to participate in that with the MPO.
Well agreed, Mr. Nunemaker, and good point. Again, you're not alone. You sit with the city of Sebastian in support of this great tool. Your community is well served, and you have not placed any heavy demands upon the system, set aside from just a lot of ridership, and knowing that your community is being served to the center of this county. I wish that all municipalities did have that level of appreciation, consideration, stewardship, and benevolence. And I believe that Mr. Baird has sent off information and requests under the direction of this commission that other municipalities do participate and afford the level of support that you have as well. We hope we have your continued support as your citizens in Fellsmere most certainly depend upon this for this transportation for their livelihood and the connection to the services that are afforded them here in Indian River County. So thank you once again. We have a motion. Yes, Councilor.
If I could just add something, and I just managed to swallow my breath mint as I said that. But
are you okay? This motion.
It looks like we'll probably have a hearing on February 22nd before the City of Vero Beach Code Enforcement Board, and it looks like I'll be representing the county and SRA at that hearing.
We'll be well represented.
Well, it may be worthwhile, or it may be useful in representing the county at that time if I have a resolution from this board that specifically requests that the action be deferred until we can complete the solution. And I'm just thinking way ahead, but in any event, I basically want to ask the Commission for authority to bring forward a resolution like that sometime in February, prior to February 22nd, if I determine that it's useful in our presentation to the Code Enforcement Board.
Councilor, I appreciate that. Could we have the motion amended to suit Councilor's request?
You got it.
Thank you, Commissioner Solari. Commissioner O'Brien?
Good.
And so amended on the second. We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Solari, seconded by Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously with Commissioner Davis absent on a previous engagement. Thank you.
Also, I guess if we're held to the fire that we have to move, we'd have to look at scaling back the route of the system to accommodate the smaller temporary site, possibly.
Well, that'll all be considered by staff, and we look forward to that presentation, inclusive of a PowerPoint. Thank you, gentlemen. Just wanted to forewarn you. With that, on the Commissioner's items, Commissioner Solari, you had a discussion on the reversal of the relief canals.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we're all aware, Commissioner Zork is leading the summit on the Indian River Lagoon sometime in March. And I was wondering if it would be possible to make a presentation at that time which would discuss the reversal of the flow of the 3 relief canals and whole apart to a storage area in the west. I believe that the piecemeal projects that we have going so far, which reduce the total nitrogen phosphorus, which now go into the lagoon, are helpful, but I believe something more in the nature of a long-term solution is going needed. I don't want to give the idea that we're going to come up with a plan by that time. I just want to try to, especially given all the community interest right now, develop something with the help of staff, particularly Mr. Moore and Mr. Burke, that will give us something around which we can discuss. I believe that any solution is going to be somewhat complex, very expensive, but very doable. And it's going to require multiple partners and players in this, and I'd like to start the identification process of those partners and players, as well as multiple funding sources. And I'd like to, well, I've actually begun that process, but I'd like to make that more public. So, understanding that there's not going to be anything near a complete plan at this time.
Right.
Just something for talking and that the community can get around and discuss more. I'd like to get the consensus from the board that I can use a little staff time for that in the next 2 months.
Let's go directly to Commissioner Zorc.
Well, and maybe one other thing you can add to it is I'm having mapping develop a map that also depicts the 26 DOT outfalls into the lagoon, just to see where those are at, where they're coming from, and I think I'll have that map probably by Friday. I'll make sure you get a copy. I don't know what the volume is going through the 26 versus the main canals, but it's obviously a factor to throw into the mix.
Excellent.
And just, Commissioner, so the only thing I would comment on is to maintain the diversity of the lagoon, it does need freshwater input. It just needs clean water and at a consistent flow rate, not the periodic surges that it gets hit with. So I would hope when you look at this, it'd be more geared to storage of the water and treatment of it in a way to get more consistent flow into the lagoon, because it does need the freshwater input to create that diverse estuary that it is. And if you take all the fresh water out, then it'll become more and more saline, and you'll actually lose some of your diversity. So it's important we keep a flow of fresh water going in, but it just needs to be cleaner and at a more consistent rate than a pulse discharge.
Agreed. And there are two comments to make to that. One is, I don't think, given the cost and everything, that will eliminate all of the flow that's going in there right now. And second, with at least what I have envisioned right now, it would end up, what isn't captured for a long-term alternative water supply would end up going into the lagoon anyway, but more through the Sebastian waterway after it's been cleaned up. So I agree with your point. And again, at this point, this is so conceptual that, just as your point's well taken, I think we'll come up with a couple dozen more well-taken points that a project like this will need to address.
I'm sure we will, and I trust that Commissioner Zorc is open-minded, that to know that the agenda may even be enveloped as the meeting is taking place, that new ideas are being proposed. Not to belabor the issue, though, but the lagoon is a brackish water estuary, and it is dependent upon the fresh water. Good point, Commissioner O'Brien. And I don't think we can rely wholeheartedly on rainwater. Many of the members of the food chain that are inside of our estuary are dependent upon that fresh water. And I believe that many of the things that are taking place on cleaning up and removing the nitrogen and phosphorus are going in the right direction, and that we will see a marked improvement. The other concern I had there, Commissioner Solari, is that many of the areas in which you speak of on the canals, the county does not have ownership, and it might be costly. As you pointed out in the letter, that there might be some financial concerns. You're not aware of the cost factor, but I most certainly would not want to see any option precluded from
everything's out there, including the Bethel Creek tunnel project. I said everything is out there, and actually there's one of those functioning in Pensacola that actually I got a video link of, that they have a similar Bethel Creek linked environment that they actually use to draw out that, what I call up and down water that doesn't go anywhere. They have at the end of their canal that when they run their pumps, it cycles the volume of water in that segment over a period of time.
Well, again, this is...
Everything's out there.
Everything's out on the table. Yep. It can be cutting, pumping, dredging, piping, reversing, and that's good news. We can look at resources and see if it's feasible. If it's not feasible, we can't get the support, we can't get the support. But we have to know options, because right now we do not know the cause of what's happening in our lagoon, and we need to know. Commissioner Solari, thank you for bringing that up, and I don't think we need to vote on that. I think we have a vote of confidence that we can just add that to the agenda as any other that are suggested until the March meeting.
Thank you.
Is that correct?
Super.
Thank you, Commissioner Zorc. Well, we've covered everything, consideration for the use of the parking, and Commissioner Zorc.
I had this added last week after receiving a request from the people that are part of the group that's putting on the event at the airport February 1st and 2nd, which is, for those who haven't seen it, it's a Christ for All Nations event, a Friday, Saturday event. Alan had sent me a suggestion of insurance requirements for if I should back up. Because of the size of the event, they're using a number of remote parking locations. First Church of God on 58th Avenue, a number of other large parking type areas. But as they were kind of doing their parking count, they wanted to have some additional space, and they asked what could they use the parking spaces at the airport. They have Magic Carpet and one other bus charter service that is going to be doing the rounds, picking up and dropping off. Starting Friday evening, I think it's 6 or 6:30, and then Saturday it's kind of a full day event. I placed a call into them yesterday to find out, do they have a policy like that in place for the event at the airport where we could do an additional insured, and I did not get an answer back for that, but if that was provided, subject to that being provided, would it be acceptable to use this as an overflow parking site for the event at the airport?
Well, the optimum option would probably be the bus hub location, or the green area, and formerly known as the County Administration Building, but I seriously doubt it we'd be able to get a special use permit under the current concerns and applications that are being discussed.
Right.
I have no objection.
But the city's allowed other churches to use our parking lot in the past. It doesn't.
Joe, I don't think that's helping us today.
Oh, okay.
I think I'd be happy if, as long as the county attorney is satisfied with that the basic county needs are met, I've got no problem with it.
Right, just for safety, security, and ensure that if they are required to have a bond, that a bond is so issued. Counselor, you have any concerns?
It is February 1st and 2nd.
I would just, to add, I have a little concern about this. I did a lot of internet searching on the pastor or whatever he is, and not that everybody's correct, but there was quite a few articles very critical of some of his claims, bringing people back from dead, Jesus Christ is going to appear on the TV screen, things like that. Apparently he makes an awful lot of money from these events by passing the plate, particularly after he's brought somebody back from the dead. So I have a little bit of skepticism of what he's actually bringing to the community, and a little reservation of being part of it. So I'm not really in favor of this activity.
I occasionally sit next to him where I attend church, and
you've always been alive, though.
I've always been alive.
Yes.
But one of his key speakers at the event is a cardiac surgeon from West Palm that will be speaking on that particular event. Most of his outreaches are in countries where they have no money to give to anything, so it's not a money-driven object. The last one of these that was held in the United States was held in Dallas, Texas, about 4 years ago, and he is a resident of the county, but he's one of the traveling evangelist type that travels the globe. But if you ever had a chance to read his book, it's amazing that he's survived the World War II efforts during Germany, and it's a pretty unique feat of what he's accomplished. And yeah, I read some of those same things on T.C. Palm and those other things, and I guess, when they don't know and they don't want to show up to hear, then they don't know what they're missing. So, but we'll check on the insurance. It's not an endorsement of it, but I will probably be there on and off during most of it because he's a very unique speaker to hear. Thank you.
And the date on it again?
February 1st and 2nd. It's a Friday night and Saturday day.
So we'll have but an additional meeting if there is any change. Yeah. But at this point, and that's what I want to point out.
Yeah.
We do have consensus. Commissioner O'Brien, you're not in favor of this at this point?
That is correct.
And Commissioner Zorc, you brought it up, so I would assume that you are.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Solari?
Just like I don't want to pick charities, winners and losers there, I'm not about to start picking winners and losers in religions.
And that's what I don't want either. We're looking at this purely as an overflow parking arrangement, and we need to get with council to ensure.
Or anything else at the airport, and they needed excess parking. I couldn't imagine a different response, with the attorneys.
So you're preferring that they go back over to do it at the airport, is it?
No, I thought they were having this at the airport.
It's at the airport,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, what I'm saying is, if the airport was having any other big event, and for public safety purposes needed additional parking, I'd support it regardless of what the event was.
That's correct, yeah, and that's, I thought I understood it, and that's my feeling as well. I'm not looking into the type of operation, I'm looking into the fact that they're looking for overflow parking. We have that, and I'm sure the appropriate documentation and assurances can be made.
To ensure the success of the event, you can be sure that I probably won't be there, and just keep it safe that way.
Yeah, I haven't checked the date on my calendar, but I'll just reserve my attendance. Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
With that, no further. Meeting adjourned.